And greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Want to remind everybody, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There is a PayPal link down there for anybody that wants to share some love. Always appreciated. Make sure you use friends and family. And of course, the StreamYard link is down there for anybody that wants to join the panel. And I'll tell you, this is a topic I think anyone down there should feel free to hit that button and come up and say something, because I think it's something that affects all of us one way or another. And, whether it be directly ourselves or through a family member or a friend or coworker or something, I think we need to get this message out there and understand that we, the people, are destroyed for lack of knowledge. The only way we can bring knowledge forth is by coming on these platforms and discussing it. And we need to discuss it with people that have that firsthand experience, involvement in it, one way or another. Now, whether that be as a victim or one of the perpetrators of the crimes or violations, misfeasance, malfeasance, whatever you want to call it, it's systemic, not just through the government, but throughout the entire population. And it's the foundation of education. So what we're going to talk about today are the court tactics that destroy the foundational family units, which is where the education belongs, no matter what the subject matter, in my opinion. And it's a very strong one. Greetings, John. How you doing today?
Keith? Brother Keith? How you doing? Looking
I
good?
am well.
Sound
yourself.
Good?
Yourself. Yeah. You're looking like you're enjoying the nice weather, as we'll call it. We've been hitting the mid 80s and low 90s for well over a month now.
I'm so hot, no shirt even inside.
Yep. I'm ready to take mine off too, but I'm on camera, so I don't appear on camera without a shirt too much. Yeah. But nothing wrong with it. Shows your comfortability and natural form, and I appreciate that as well. So let me ask you, John, I'm sure you're familiar with the court tactics that we've been talking about. What are your thoughts as it relates to my idea that it all stems from that education being misplaced from the family unit to a public entity where they then control the standards and the outcomes?
So the question is, like, what's the role of the courts as far as,
from your perspective, what do you see the same thing as the problem with the courts and their role not being comprehended and understood properly? Do you understand it the same way as the foundation of knowledge? We haven't been given the proper knowledge because we've been indoctrinated ourselves, just like our parents.
Well, yeah, Keith. I mean, it's a simulated system. See, it's not real. Nothing in this world is real anymore, including courts. I mean, courts are just like nasty ghost attacks on the people.
Well, let's put it right, and I understand where you're coming from, but let's put it into perspective for the public audience. That it's not that they're actually not real. It's just that the way they operate doesn't have any real foundation, because they're not following the standards that they're supposed to under the administration of the executive branch. And that's the problem. Without having the proper knowledge of how they operate, people get involved with them without understanding that they have no authority, none. And that's why it's important to do your research and get that education, get that comprehension. And like I've said many times, don't believe me, don't believe the neighbor, don't believe the government. For crying out loud, don't believe your mother. Even if she's the one teaching you, you have to still, even if it's like I explained with the public education system, you have to go beyond that and research yourself so you don't end up believing what they're indoctrinating you. This is why you're supposed to, as a young man and young woman, go out upon the world and find another man or woman to cleave unto, so you can detach from your parents. But the first thing we do when we detach from our parents is, because we've been indoctrinated just like our parents, we then cleave unto a false patriarch. And that's all, again, because of the foundation of education has been misplaced. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, the only power they have, Brother Keith, is the power we give them.
Correct. And before we get into this, because I've got a few videos here that I want to look at, so this is going to be a stream for a while. But the premise, again, on the foundation of education in the family is that if we send our children off prior to their spiritual acknowledgement, their ability to recognize their own spirituality, which is the first 7 years, we end up sending our kids off to preschool and kindergarten at 4 and 5 years old. And we need to understand that is part of the destruction, and we are doing it ourselves. And this is because this false patriarch brings about this this parallel system that seems so comfortable and convenient to allow somebody else to take the responsibility. In that same thing, the foundation of education, the foundation of disciplining our children, people felt disempowered because they didn't do their research back in the 50s and 60s when they brought out the child protection laws. Okay, those child protection laws are based on certain definitions, and the very definition of child is an adopted child. That's the legal definition of child within this system is an adopted child, and that's literally what happens at birth. The enumeration at birth is an adoption of a child, which is an incompetent minor of a major corporation. It's merely a United States business, and there is no way in hell it is possible for a newborn infant child, an heir apparent that just took his first breath, be able to be a corporate entity of any sort. So it is merely a record keeping for a use, but nobody comprehends or is educated about the use in this usufruct. So let's get into it. And the first video I've got here is just an inspirational one. Please pay attention. This is Nordia Mothersill. Feel free to go over and check her out. Nordia Mothersill. I will put the thing in the chat for everybody. But
Yeah.
this is for
Thanks, because I would probably never remember that one.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
If I want it, then I will have it. I am destined, I am magic. It was written once I spoke. Roll it in a blunt, light up and smoke. I breathe in greatness. And when I speak, I'm leaking greatness. It wasn't given, no, it's in it. The kind of energy you can't escape. I am the I am who I am. I am the I am, I am. I am the I am who I am. I am the I am, I am.
And I like it so much, guys. I hope you do too. I'm going to run it twice because I've spoken on this many times, you know, in this Christian society. And I'm not a Christian, but I grew up in all of the different kinds of religious sects according to Christianity: Presbyterian, Protestant, Methodist, Baptist, you name it, through the different foster homes, 15 to 20 of them for over a 5-year period. Then I was adopted and brought up under Methodist by the people that adopted me. And then beyond that, when I quit church at 15, I still studied religion and theology on my own, including Buddhism, Hinduism, all the stuff. And I understand the principal basic concept, both of identity and the image and likeness, as we look at our brothers and sisters and agree that we should do unto each other as we would have them do unto ourselves. And in that Christian scripture, it tells us that we are to call him I am forever. And yet here we are in these modern days calling it God.
If I want it, then I will have it. I am destined, I am magic. It was written once I spoke. Roll it in a blunt, light up and smoke. I breathe in greatness. And when I speak, I'm leaking greatness. He wasn't given no wits in it. The kind of energy you can't escape. I am the I am, I am who I am. I am
the I am, I am, I am the I am, I am, I am, I am the I am.
If I want it, then
I love that shit, people. I love that. That's that image and likeness. I am. It's not who somebody else says I am. And if my people call me Kunta Kinte, that's maybe what I might prefer. But even through these Christian scriptures, it's him, the I am, the it, the I am, Ruach HaKodesh, the source of life that names you. And when this false patriarch puts out that name in a diverted form, converted form, that is not yourself. So please pay attention. The next one, we've got a father as it goes to that education, confronts the deranged teacher. Okay, and this is one of those things I was talking about with the aspects of child abuse and parents feeling disempowered because they didn't understand the terms and conditions of those laws that were passed. And those are contracts. And when you sign your children up for a public education system, that is a contract, assuming a minimum state contact, where you are presumed then to be a resident, which under Iowa, resident determination is for income tax purposes. And at the federal level, it's saying that you're a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board. And when you go putting that stuff down on documentation and doing the things that raise that presumption, that is a lie. And you are bearing false witness on a public record. You are the one doing that, not them. They are just making the offer. That is the satanic test. That is Satan testing you. And when they make an offer, it's an offer and acceptance in formation of contract, not information, in formation of a contract. And what you're doing is giving them data elements. Who's your data? Huh? Who's your real data? So let's take a look.
So Keith, we're authorized signers, but it's up to us to determine the degree of
Correct.
what we put in. Okay.
Correct. And that's why I talk about anything they hand you. You have the ability to go through it, read it, prove your comprehension by line item vetoing, striking through what is incorrect and placing above it, known as overwriting, what is true and correct.
Why do liberals want to teach kids about sex so much? Butt plugs in this case? What?
I think that safe sex is always important. Safe sex practices are always important.
Well, if safe sex is important, what?
Yes, safe sex is important, folks, but it is not this woman's to teach your child about safe sex. Okay? We all comprehend that one, right? Most of us do. Some of us still think it's okay. But see, that's the premise. It is never, in my deep opinion, and I will stand on this the rest of my life, from my firsthand experiences, that it should never be the false patriarch's job to educate any child that is not, in fact, according to their laws, an adopted or foster care child. Period. See, and that's where you have to understand that disempowerment is your own belief, and you didn't do it. You did it because you didn't do your research. My parents did it because they didn't do their research. They allowed the state to come in and take over the children and the family, along with the rest of their brothers and sisters. 13 brothers and sisters on my dad's side, 7 brothers and sisters on my mom's side, for a total of 20 family members outside of the single family unit that could have and should have, in the natural sense, taken charge of those heir apparents to that family legacy. Go ahead.
Wow. That many?
Yeah. Back in the day, there were big family units, folks. That's what the government is doing. That's what Roman Catholicism does. It takes the polygamy of large family units and changes it to monogamy to have a smaller family unit so they can control it and destroy it much easier. Do you or do you not agree that it's easier to destroy the foundation of one family unit if they only have 2 or 3 kids and one mom and dad that are stupid and have no brothers and sisters that have the ideology of a solid family foundation because they follow Catholicism as well, and now they've fallen victim as a family entirely? So you agree that it would be much easier to take out that one family unit of 3 or 4 people rather than a family unit of each of those 20 brothers and sisters having a family unit of at least 2 or 3 according to the minimal. But in their regular standards, each one of those others would also have larger families. So it's exponential. So it's a very strong tactic for this monogamy thing. And I can't say that I agree with it or disagree with it. All I can say is that's the way it seems to me, and that's the way society has turned. If you understand Israel, the foundation of the 12 tribes, Jacob and the 12 sons, and the polygamy that occurred, and the foundation that every one of those sons' names has a meaning. And when you put those meanings together, it spells out a birthright. That's the foundation. That foundation was destroyed by Judaism, which then turned around and brought in Catholicism with Christianity and Jesus. But it was still the same basic foundation, that the destruction of the very Israelites came upon the foundation of Judaism that claimed they were the chosen ones only, and all others were Gentiles, dismissing the other 11 tribes of Israel. Nobody wants to talk about that in theology. It was a control mechanism once they came out of slavery because they thought they needed to control the people and their decisions. They went out and started crying because the promised land wasn't what they thought. So God sent down the serpents and cast so many of them out, it almost decimated them.
Yeah,
They didn't get the message.
That was a big fat lie, the promised land.
Well, no, it was promised. But understand, just because you were put into slavery by another kind of people doesn't mean you forget the story of Adam and Eve, where mankind, no matter what race or anything, was put about the earth to be stewards. They had an obligation to fulfill now. You can't just go out and inspect the Garden of Eden. You were taken out of the Garden of Eden. Now you have to till the soil in order to get your efforts to prosper. That's the fallen message. So let's listen to the thing about.
Okay, so that opens my mind to that a little more. Thanks for doing that, Brother Keith.
Yeah, and that's the thing about equity, folks. Equity imputes an intent to fulfill an obligation. So if you want to return to the Garden of Eden, you have to fulfill your spiritual obligation, which is as a steward in his house and not as a slave in the house of a false patriarch.
What does that have to do with a butt plug, though? That's a sex toy.
And that is a type of, that's queer sex, though. That's not heterosex. And then you
See, she's delegating butt sex as queer sex. You can't do that. I know many people that have consummated a heterosexual relationship, and either party might like it in the butt. And so they use butt plugs in heterosexual sex, and they'll mention that in this video.
called it disgusting. Yes. So you told me that the sex that my counterparts have is disgusting, and I don't
It's not this. What?
see how that is not openly homophobic.
It's teaching high schoolers about butt plugs is disgusting. How is this so hard for these people to understand?
It's not
You don't need.
See, I could understand, and I do understand the inability to equate that you should hand over the education of, say, math to somebody that is actually educated in math. But that's only because you stopped your education in math. You limited yourself. You didn't go beyond. And this is one of those things that I talk about that saddens me in today's world, is that I see so many of our younger generations walking out of these high school institutions and never picking up another book because they've been convinced that they've been educated enough at that young of an age to go out upon the world and be successful. And that's false. You've been indoctrinated to be a slave and to be taken advantage of anytime they want. And that's exactly what they will do through any mechanism, including the public education, which is their main focus. Public education and the news media. Everything you see and hear, the eyes to see and the ears to hear. You've been duped in so many ways.
Need to teach them this?
That's why they're squareheads when they graduate.
Say what?
That's why they're squareheads when they graduate.
Yeah. They've been indoctrinated into a military form to just do what they've been told. Remember this and just do it. They're never taught to think outside the box, to be autodidactic, to learn themselves. They're never taught how to actually do the research on both sides of the tracks so that when they come to a conclusion, they have solid foundational information that shows the positive aspect of their argument.
Need to have a butt plug to have sex with a dude. You just need two dicks. What are we talking about? This is ridiculous.
That means that you think that only homosexual couples use butt plugs. Heterosexual couples use butt plugs as well.
Yeah, you can have either gay or homosexual, I guess I should call it, homosexual or heterosexual sex, and still use gags. It's just a plugging the other end of the same orifice holes. It's just a tunnel through you, and you just plug in one end or the other. They call them different things. One's called a gag and one's called a butt plug. They both plug one end or the other. Okay. And if this is the kind of shit that you're expecting your public education system to teach your children, then you're far too gone to even comprehend, because the people out there that are allowing this, that are allowing these books in these schools, that are being censored in public libraries, but yet they allow them in the schools, and they won't let them be read aloud in city council or county commission meetings and stuff to show that they shouldn't belong there. They're saying that, well, that's not appropriate public material, yet you're going to put them in the public education system for your children to read. It's insanity.
Can you imagine showing this video to Thomas Jefferson? Oh my God.
I'm saying that teaching children, minors, about this is disgusting.
Right. So I guess that comes into a abstinence only education versus safe.
No, it's not abstinence only to not want to teach kids about sex toys.
No, it's not abstinence only. It's not safe sex. At the end of the day, unless the actual butt plug is not properly sanitized.
Exactly. And I think that's what that book was detailing, is how to safely use those instruments.
On how to use
butt plugs. We don't need to.
Children.
We don't need to do that.
Are you a parent?
I'm not a parent.
I would have never guessed.
Imagine that. See, that's another thing that I speak about when I talk about these teachers, particularly those that aren't married, they're not parents, things like that. They have their own ideologies in that aspect of the life that they're living in. So when we see these queer teachers, their ideology is queer-based. So when we have all these different ideologies influencing our children, it's no wonder they grow up confused.
Yep. By people that don't even know the child before they meet him for that semester. Imagine that.
Exactly. And they don't care about that child so much as they might profess, because they're still imposing their ideologies on these children. I mean, imagine the sexual education from a heterosexual male instead of this lady who has no children versus the heterosexual male that has or has a family of seven children, 3 of them boys and 4 of them girls. See, that's the man that's going to stand up and say, no, you're not going to teach my children about butt plugs. It's generally the people that are two homosexual fathers that adopted a child, that entered that child into the school, that now want this type of sex education in that school. It's profound and it's insane.
Okay, and you are a parent.
Yes.
Okay,
What the hell is even that?
and so as a father of three, two boys and a girl, I don't want anyone teaching my child how to use sex toys of any kind.
Fucking obviously. How do you let this happen? So here's the reason why they think this. It's because people are too afraid to tell them no. Like, listen to this.
It's not openly homophobic because that means
To call queer sex disgusting.
The reason why people put up with this,
He didn't call queer sex disgusting. He never said any such thing. See, this is their delusion. They will take what you say and then project so that others think that that's what you're saying without even listening. So it's a hype thing so that when other people that are claiming this guy is homophobic hear her say that he said queer sex is disgusting, they get all aboard and hop on that bandwagon and want to start bashing him. He never said any such thing.
is because they're afraid of being maliciously and unfairly labeled with these terms that could damage their career. It's not.
And that's the whole thing. See, like I said earlier, when we talk about these child abuse protection laws that were instituted in the 50s and 60s and stuff, and the parents started feeling disempowered, it's because they didn't research it. They didn't look at the terms that were being used. The same thing goes for today. When you look at the term gender and you understand what it means, and you look at the term sex and you understand what it means, you cannot change your sex, therefore you cannot change your gender. Period. Go ask a female dog if it's a female or male. Guess what? It's not going to answer because it can't. But it still remains obvious that it's a fucking female dog and not a male dog. Okay? This is the delusion that we're facing. And I urge everybody to come out of it. It takes no more than eyes to see, even before you have to have ears to hear.
Not homophobic to not want kids to learn about butt plugs. We need to figure out why you think that it's so important for them to learn about butt plugs. You need to flip the script on these people and actually treat them like the aggressors that they are.
Absolutely. Like I said, she was flipping the script by projecting that he was saying queer sex is gross. He never said any such thing. So we really have to pay attention to the language and the words and terms being used. So when they put out these laws, and we have to pay attention to the effects that when they put out these laws, like the straws, that was one of my favorites. They regulated plastic straws and paper wraps and ended up with paper straws and plastic wraps. So the country spent, or the state of California anyway, spent all this time crying and whining about plastic straws. So they regulated them out, and now they have paper straws and plastic wraps. Never got rid of the plastic issue, nor did they even discuss the actual plastic issue in grand scale, where those plastic straws are placed in plastic lids that cover plastic cups. Fucking insane. And this is what you support, and this is why you say your vote counts, because you two are fucking insane. And remember, folks, I too was a bitch ass slave. I'm not afraid to admit it. I am, however, proud to admit that I stopped. Let's take a look at the next one, which is a city council meeting held in Iowa here a couple weeks ago. And this is something they're doing in all 50 states. They're traveling all 50 states, and they've made a number of announcements at city councils in a number of states now. And this is going down, folks. I want to take a look at this one before we get into the primary thing about what the administrative courts are doing as it relates to destroying the family. Notice is given. So let's take a look. This is I guess we'll have to see what city. What's it say? City of Davenport. There it is, Davenport. I thought it was Davenport, Iowa. It's right on the Mississippi. It's part of the Quad Cities. Davenport, Moline, Rock Island, and something else. So let's pay attention to the city council meeting here a couple weeks ago. What's it say? June 26th.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Saxon. I'm a civil rights advocate and litigator from Washington, D.C. I need to provide a public notice to you today. This is in accordance with USCS rules as well as the Rule 17 and Rule 20 of the United States Supreme Court. The Constitution for the United States of America.
Rule 17 of the Federal Rules of City or Civil Procedure is what is it? Let me pull it up so I get the title wording correct, because it is very specific as to the parties in a court. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 17. Rule 17, plaintiff and defendant capacity public officers. And what this is saying in plain English, and in plain English, concise English, you can read things both forward and backward, and it will say the same thing. And so when we look at these hyphens, these semicolons, it's a separation without full separation. So what it's saying is, in order for the plaintiff and defendant to be a party in a court, their capacity as parties in a court, in a suit, they must be public officers. If you understand 18 or 19 USC 81O, residents in the zone, no person shall reside in the zone except federal, state, or municipal officers or agents whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board. So in most of these cases, the laid out presumption is that you are a resident. Relating to Rule 17, plaintiff and defendant capacity as a public officer, performing the functions of public office. It's as simple as it gets, folks. So let's go back. Oops, wrong one.
Is the overarching requirement that we are to follow. Every state must follow that. I don't think that anyone here would disagree with that. States are not able to enact its own alternative legislation in substitute.
And Rule 20 would be joinder, general joinder. And that's in relations to the 14th Amendment. So anytime they're using a commercial aspect, which is the only thing these administrative courts do, is they administrate commercial activities under executive orders. And that's the identification needed, supposedly. But they present that the ID is state presentation, where you can have private credentials.
For the guarantees.
That's the problem with the enumeration at birth. It establishes a public office. When that Social Security number is assigned to the individual, that's stating that they are a Medicare qualified government employee operating a United States business as a resident, a United States citizen that has moved out of the United States and is now residing in one of the states, several of the union.
As an assumed common carrier.
Yes, as an assumed common carrier of an insurance contract.
That would mean that the state laws are in fact more powerful than the Constitution.
Which is a taxable event.
Clause 1 of Amendment 5 states that no person should be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment by a grand jury. The state here, Iowa, has enacted its own alternative legislation that permits the prosecuting attorney and police officers to charge by way of information as opposed to indictment.
By way of information, offer and acceptance in formation of contract.
That is unconstitutional. An emolument violation is when you pay public officials to commit a crime.
This is what Chris was always talking about in regards to a remonstrance. Bless his soul, may he rest in peace as one of those that walked in the ways of Christ to try to correct the record through a remonstrance. Because this emoluments of office, this is the part where it's deemed necessary by the board. And the board is the Secretary of Commerce as the executive chairman and the Secretary of Treasury. See, it's all about commerce, folks. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. The performance of the functions of public office today is a performance contract. First, there must be a bid bond, then a performance bond, and then you get a payment bond. If those bonds are not acquired properly, per, and somebody is using the person in error, then there's something wrong. And I'm telling everybody that it's your fault because everybody like myself has been indoctrinated to believe they are in fact the person instead of the I am.
There's two areas in the Constitution that enforce this. One is Article 1, Section 10, where it says that no state shall create any law that shall impair the obligation of contracts.
And so the obligation of contracts would go to the same thing as a covenant. And if I already have a covenant with the source of life, as I call it, that this Christian society calls God, and that's the only way I can portray it to them, then they damn well better understand that they cannot violate the ordination and sanctification that I received before I even came forth of my mother's womb and took my first breath, because he was the one that knew me before I was formed in the belly and conscribed upon my heart to be a prophet unto the nations, diligently dividing the truth of the words, period. That's my only obligation.
Police officers, prosecutors, your judges are all under oath, a contract to perform based on oath or affirmation that they took. The contract perimeters here are defined within the Constitution of the United States, and when the state enacts its own alternative legislation and directs their agent to disobey the law, which is the Constitution of the United States, that would be a violation of Article 1, Section 10.
And that's the supreme law of the land, that they all have to take an oath in order to uphold and support. That's what they're supposed to be enforcing. But because we have an American education system that rats out 8th grade education as an average, then we have a society that's been dumbed down into a bunch of Tobies.
The 14th Amendment is the other place where you find the reinforcement of this issue, and that is where it says that no state shall create or enforce any law that shall abridge the immunity or privileges of a United States citizen. The privileges and immunities of the United States citizens are at a minimum those that are enumerated in the first 10 Bill of Rights.
Wrong. Can you tell me why that's wrong, John?
I missed that, Keith. Could you hit me again?
Citizen. The privileges and immunities is the other place where you find the reinforcement of this issue, and that is where it says that no state shall create or enforce any law that shall abridge the immunity or privileges of a United States citizen. The privileges.
Wait a minute. The U.S. citizen has more power than the state citizen, something's wrong with that.
Exactly. See, it's the problem is the first 10 articles of the Bill of Rights has nothing to do with the United States citizen. Okay. That's a construct that comes under the commercial elements only. Prior to that, we have the First Amendment, which is the freedom of association. We do not have to associate with the United States federally created person, nor do we have to associate with a state created resident as a dual citizen in that monopoly of persons. We can create and should be creating our own persons and providing a registration to the USPTO, United States Patent and Trademark Office. L. Hotep Secondly Pero. That is my own penned name. I repenned. I repented. I am resurrected in a new name. I am resurrected. Corrected.
Privileges and immunities of the United States citizens are at a minimum those that are enumerated in the first 10 Bill of Rights.
And that's the part where I said she's wrong. At a minimum are the first 10 parts of the Bill of Rights. No, those are for the people.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a list of restrictions.
Correct. And then you have the commercial element coming in with Congress in Article 11. Or the 11th Amendment, which then carries on through the 12th, and then the 13th, which talks about no slavery, and also talked about no titles of nobility prior, and then the 14th. And see, that's why I talk about the diplomatic etiquette. If you don't know the difference between yourself and the person, you will never have a proper diploma. That high school diploma, that's telling you that you have some kind of diplomacy about you. But the only diplomacy you have about you is etiquette in person. You don't know thyself. You go out upon the world, and instead of resurrecting a new name for yourself in that business atmosphere, in that fictional playground, you go out upon the world and you tell them your given name and your family name. And that's the error. Why do you think Prince created a symbol? It's no longer a name. You want a signature? You're going to have to get the rubber stamp of my symbol. And the only one authorized to do that is myself. Goodness gracious. Where's the signature that shows that you had power of attorney to use my stamp? See, now the stamp isn't used in the commercial world, which is public, but the signature remains on the private contract, which doesn't go out into public. So he could literally use his signature, which would be his thumbprint, an X, his first name only, or the use of that rubber stamp as a symbol. And only he would know how he signed those private documents versus what he signs in public. Remember all the sports and sports superstars and the movie stars and singers that autograph things? And they've been indoctrinated into signing that documentation the same way I was. They don't understand the difference. So instead of giving a unique signature that would prove it's them, go ahead, John.
We end up being attached to a fleet post when it should have been diplomatic.
Correct.
The first 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights. They cannot be impaired. The state of Iowa, unfortunately, has enacted a law that is inferior to the Constitution that permits public officials, law enforcement, who you all pay, to violate the Constitution. Tanoa Downing is preparing to litigate this issue at the United States Supreme Court on behalf of more than 700,000 prisoners that are currently.
They're doing this on behalf of prisoners, not you guys, not us. Okay? But understand, preemptively, that's why I speak out. 33 years, 93 cases, in and out of those courts every 3, 4, 6 weeks. 33 years. Finally, I stood up and started speaking out and doing something about it. And all of a sudden, 10 years later, there's nothing. There's nothing they can do to me as long as I keep running my mouth and spouting nothing but the truth. Okay?
There you go.
So it's important, again, that we have these discussions in these open platforms and understand that we need to come together in nothing more than just the truth. Not even the commercial venues, nothing. That's why I don't monetize or anything. Greetings, brother. How you doing today?
Greetings, bro. Hey, I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so if you were in a state and you had, suppose you had a cannabis charge, you went to appeals, you beat the cannabis charge in the appeals, does that mean you get to, and they can't come back at you because it'll be double jeopardy? So are you allowed to open anywhere in America, or is it just in the county or that state that you won in?
It would be relative to the jurisdiction of the court that gave the ruling. But what I suggest, and this is the importance of understanding adoption and mergers. Okay. I suggest, and this is a tactic that nobody else is going to tell you, and I hope you appreciate my being autodidactic and thinking critically outside of the box, coming up with new ideas for people, because this is critical here. I helped a young man in Ohio a few years back beat child support by adopting the case. What that does, it allows you, it puts you as the primary party, as the interest in holding the interest. Okay. So when you get a ruling like that, go to your neighboring jurisdictions, find out what jurisdiction that ruling is enforced in, and then go to all the outside jurisdictions, including the U.S. Federal Supreme Court, and ask them to merge it, so that in any future event you have to bring a 1983 claim, it's under Article 4 of the Constitution, equal protection of the law among the states. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so if I won something in California, it's pretty much for California. And if I
Right.
go to like another state and if I get raided again, just fight it again, right?
Right. So you take it to the governor of each state, send the California court's ruling to the governor of each state and ask them to adopt it, so that when you come to their state, there's already legal notice, the first duty of law.
Thank you. Thank you very much, buddy. And it's always good to see you.
You bet. I urge nobody to run from anything. I urge everybody to stand your square and speak the truth from where you're at. That's legal notice. The first duty of law is legal notice. Give them the proper declaration. Let them know who you are. But before you can do that, folks, you have to know thyself. And I am not God, and neither is God God. Even in the Christian scriptures, Chris here will tell you, it says in Matthew that it is to be known as I am forever. Yet here we are in modern times still calling it God. That's a noun.
Currently incarcerated here in America unconstitutionally and illegally. I am here today to provide you notice that if you continue to pay public officials to break the law, that there can be criminal sanctions that can come with that. Nobody wants to go down that path because we believe that it will be very messy. Nonetheless, officials must be made aware that they are paying.
And in fact, Chris, that's what this young lady and the other gentleman is doing, Tana Downing. They're going from state to state to give legal notice of their action in the federal Supreme Court, giving every state notice that it's across the board, it is systemic. And that's another point our next video is going to make. And that's why I urge you to give the same kind of notice. It's just giving legal notice. And if you've got something that's valid in one state, then make it valid in the others. That's Article 4, equality of the law, or equal protection of the law among the states.
People to disobey the law. This is an moment violation. It is illegal and it is unconstitutional.
Thank you.
Thank you. I need to put this on the record if you don't mind. Where can I direct this?
You can give it to the clerk.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Tanner Downey, and I'm a national civil rights advocate litigator that Ms. Saxon was just talking about. The reason why I'm up here now is I want to urge you all to please take a look at Amendment 5, confirm the things that we're saying, and let's direct our agents to act in lawful, constitutional manner, consistent with the obligations that they have codified within the Constitution of the United States. This is a very, very
consistent with the obligation they have codified in the United States, and that's the Constitution of the United States. And that's what I was talking about before. Equity imputes an intent to fulfill an obligation. So make them fulfill their obligation. Give them legal notice that what they're doing is wrong, or give them legal notice that you have that lawful order in California, and now you wish to follow the equality of the law among the states. Do you agree in the Fourth Amendment that you are already obligated under that same Constitution to that Fourth Amendment as well? Governor so-and-so of such and such a state, and get their agreement to adopt the ruling.
very big deal right now. And I want
They pretty much have to.
you guys to understand that, you know, what we're doing as of this moment, we've already served your Attorney General, Iowa State Attorney. We've already served your Supreme Court justices. I'm prepared to argue this at the United States Supreme Court. This is a prima facie per se crime, because when a public official just decides to rely upon an inferior state statute to deprive a person of a right that's guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States, that is a crime. It's Title 18, subsection 242. Deprivation of rights under color of law. What that states is that any person who, under the color of any state statute, ordinance, custom, or regulation, deprives any person of any rights secured by the Constitution, commits that crime. This is a per se crime, which means that we don't have to prove that they intended to breach their obligations. Simply by virtue of the breach, all elements of crime have been met, because their willfulness and their knowledge derives from the promise they make. If you make a promise that you'll do something, and you fail to do it, then we don't have to show that you intended to do it because of the promise that you made. You've already implicitly invited punishment in the form of perjury.
You guys understand that? Again, that's the equity imputes an intent to fulfill an obligation. Under the U.S. Constitution, they entered into equity. And when they do these administrations without equity, they fail that. And that already shows intent, because they already promised equity. They already promised to fulfill that obligation.
Reason why we're here with you guys right now is because you guys are paying these public officials to do their work. And so if these public officials, police officers, sheriff's department, the jail, if it's housing individuals that have been unlawfully and unconstitutionally arrested because the state of Iowa did not follow the proper procedures codified in the Constitution of the United States for the adjudication of crime, then you guys are paying for these things to occur. And that means that you can be held culpable in that, because when it comes to the crime of conspiracy with regard to public officials, it states that any person who, having knowledge of any of the wrongs conspired to be done, and who have the power to prevent or aid in the prevention of the commission of same, neglects or refuses to do so, may be joined as defendants in the action.
And that's misprision of felony. It's a 3-year sentence. And it's one of the most common ones to invoke into cases like this. But I urge people to understand 18 U.S.C. 1589. Well, let me pull that one up. As it relates to the 14th Amendment and forced labor. Let's take a look at this definition real quick. It says, whoever knowingly provides or obtains the labor or services of a person by any one of or by any combination of the following means: by means of force, threats of force, physical restraint, or threats of physical restraint to that person or another person, by means of serious harm or threats of serious harm to that person or another person, by means of the abuse or threatened abuse of law or legal process, or by any means of any scheme, plan, or pattern intended to cause the person to believe that if that person did not perform such labor or services, that person or another person would suffer serious harm or physical restraint, shall be punished as provided under subsection D. Whoever violates this section shall be fined under this title, imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. So I'd much rather prefer to put the threat of 20 years to their face rather than 3. And if death results from a violation of this section, or if the violation includes kidnapping, an attempt to kidnap, aggravated sexual abuse, or attempt to kill, the defendant shall be fined under this title, imprisoned for any term of years or life, or both. So let's take a look at C when it says in this section, the term abuse or threatened abuse of law or legal process means the very use or threatened use of a law or legal process, whether administrative, civil, or criminal, in any manner or for any purpose for which the law was not designed, in order to exert pressure on another person to cause that person to take some action or refrain from taking some action. So as we've explained about personal jurisdiction, where it says personal jurisdiction refers to the power that a court has to make a decision regarding the party being sued in a case. Obtaining personal jurisdiction, it says typically for a court to have personal jurisdiction over a defendant, the plaintiff needs to serve the defendant in the state in which the court sits. So if you're being served by a court, or if you're being served by an officer alongside the road who can't be a complainant and therefore can't be the plaintiff, okay, it's not proper service. Okay, understand that first and foremost. And that means both these elements have to be fulfilled. Okay, and the defendant needs to voluntarily appear in court. So I don't know what it's so hard to understand about that, but we really need to start learning how to read, because it's that simple, folks.
So we brought this to your attention. This is one of many stops that we're making across the country. We started yesterday in Indiana, and we're now doing 55 stops over the next 40 days, providing notice to individuals that are paying for these crimes to be committed, and asking them to please, let's correct them so we don't have any further litigation, and we can go into this argument together, jointly working to correct these unconstitutional acts that are being committed by law enforcement officers and public officials.
And that's another thing I speak on, is the full acquittance and discharge for in the interest of the United States and for the account of the United States and for the person making the same, so that no person shall be held liable in any court. So when he says he doesn't want to go into litigation, he wants to work together and get this corrected. That's what I'm talking about, correcting the records as a matter of full acquittance and discharge. I don't want to charge anybody with abuse or threatened abuse of the law. I don't want to do that. Okay. I just want to go forth and just correct all the records, make all parties whole. I just want you to do your damn job that you keep saying that you're doing when you're not. Okay.
This is the least destructive way to do that. So I urge you guys to please, let's work together and let's make this happen. So I'm gonna have a seat here, and I'm gonna remain here until after this meeting is over. But I do want you to understand that I've spoken, or we've gotten word back from Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, and he has agreed that any time that a state judge chooses to violate a federal law, that they are subject to arrest.
So Kash Patel has confirmed that anytime any state judge violates a federal law, they are subject to federal arrest. And when they take an oath to the Constitution, then they are violating that Constitution when they're administrating people they're not supposed to be having contact with. Okay. Anything there, John?
No, just even though the 14th Amendment was never adopted properly, Keith, that
Correct.
is the Constitution in their eyes since 1868.
Correct. Yep. And that's part of the problem again. And of course, this is being dismantled before our eyes in case you don't understand it. The Chevron doctrine was overturned a couple years back. And that's an important aspect that we have to understand in draining the swamp, as well as the fact that you remember Kennedy was trying to do the same kind of stuff. And here we have Trump coming in, and I'm not a registered voter, never voted. I don't care so much about Trump or Biden or any of the political parties. What I'm caring about is the correcting of the people. And so in that, I fully expect history to repeat itself as this stuff comes crumbling down. Somebody again will make another attempt on Trump's life, and maybe sooner or later somebody might be successful, thereby history repeating itself in a president trying to drain the swamp and gets assassinated. We end up back in the swamp. So I don't expect anything higher than my own self correcting my own self. In that, however, I still urge everybody, you have to learn how to stand up and speak against this stuff, because that's the only way this government shit is going to change. It's when the people wake up and realize they're, in fact, the ones that are supposed to govern their own mentality. So let's look at the mentality as Dr. Bandy Lee's testimony to the Arizona Senate on family court violence as one of the top psychiatrists in the world. Oops.
Yes, I'm Bandy Lee. I'm from New York City. I will be speaking as an expert as well as someone with personal involvement in the family court of Bergen County, New Jersey.
Could you please tell us your expertise? Your expertise?
I'm a forensic psychiatrist and violence expert with 25 years of experience. I've been in criminal and civil courts as an expert witness in about 200 cases. About 50 of them are in family court.
That'll do it. All right, please proceed, ma'am.
Just to give a little bit of more background, I am president of the World Mental Health Coalition, co-founder of the Violence Prevention Institute. I was a research fellow of the National Institute of Mental Health, taught at Yale School of Medicine and Yale Law School for 17 years before transferring to the Harvard program in psychiatry and the law. In 2007, I helped co-author the United Nations Secretary General's chapter on violence against children, among other international documents, helping governments to implement prison reform and other violence reduction programs. For clinical practice, I work in maximum security prisons, treating some of the most violent individuals our society produces. Yet, nothing prepared me for family court. We do not ordinarily think of family courts as sites of violence, but by denying, or worse, exploiting the existence of domestic violence and child abuse, family courts have become one of the deadliest places for children and the adults who try to protect them. I commend you for calling these meetings.
And that's who I scream out for, because that's the true victim in any of this. Again, if you don't have your house set in order and you allow that false patriarch to enter without knowing it, they will be in there for the rest of your life. So that itself has already destroyed your family foundation. Next, it will ruin the adult relationship, which is in fact the destruction of the family and the destruction of the child or children. I'm telling you from firsthand experience. It's actually one of the greatest events in my life that makes me aware of what I am today. But I guarantee you there's a much better way of coming about the realization of that spirituality than having your life destroyed before your eyes and watch it being repeatedly destroyed and watching families being repeatedly destroyed. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And somehow we don't get it.
and calling out family court as the national emergency that it is. I have testified before the legislatures of Colorado, New York, Louisiana, Tennessee, and Washington, and I'm very honored to be here. I'll be submitting a more scholarly written testimony for the record, but here I will not mince words. Family courts are a danger to society. And
family courts are a danger to society. Now, remember all those news reporters that had a story one time, and there's a meme out there, and it pops up with one screen with a news caster out there saying this is dangerous to our democracy. And then you see another newscaster up, and they say the exact same thing. See, all these news media, they're spouting the same thing. It's propaganda, indoctrination, subliminal messaging. And people kowtow it to it so much. This is a danger to our democracy. Whose democracy? Why are you part of that democracy? Why do you need 50% of the vote when what is done is what ought be done? There is nothing new under the sun. You fake fucking Christians.
unless dramatically reformed, they need to be abolished altogether for the safety of our children and their loving families. This may sound extreme, but when an institution causes far greater harm than good, indeed sends close to 100,000 children per year to their sole murder, if not actual murder, then such an intervention is necessary. I have the empirical data to back up my claims, which I can get to if there's time. Despite my 25 years as an expert witness for the courts, I did not know about family courts. Since learning about them, I tried to take as many cases as possible, but while I'm considered a highly qualified expert in criminal and any other court, only in family court have I been unwelcome. In fact,
only in family court have I been unwelcomed. And this is going to be portrayed later as she speaks about how these people use associative members that aren't even licensed to put forth opinions that then they base their rulings on, rather than using multiple professionals that say otherwise. See, it's the family courts and the destruction of the family foundation that is a must. And that's why they hate these kind of things, because these kind of things bring forth the truth. These kind of people going into those courts and telling them their expert opinion destroys them. That's why they don't allow them in those courts. That's why I beg them, give me another competency test. You fools, you've tried 3 times already. Let's go. But this time, let's make sure that if I'm taking a competency test for my personal services provided for filling out all those blanks, you in equal consideration, equal benefit to fulfill an obligation, you too will take the test. Let's see who's smarter.
Yeah, it's called meritocracy.
Yep.
find almost any reason not to admit me. This is because they, as a rule, are not looking for qualified experts. They say poorly trained or compromised so-called experts will fix the results in the direction they desire. In other words, the opposite direction of which the case should go. Unfortunately, sending children to their abuse, rape, battery, murder, sex trafficking, and pornography production has become a lucrative business. I would not have known about that.
And she stated this succinctly and clearly. So let's listen to that again.
Direction they desire. In other words, the opposite direction of which the case should go. Unfortunately, sending children to their abuse, rape, battery, murder, sex trafficking, and pornography production has become a lucrative business. Go. Unfortunately, sending children to their abuse, rape, battery, murder, sex trafficking, and pornography production has become a lucrative business. Unfortunately, sending children to their abuse, rape, battery, murder, sex trafficking, and pornography production has become a lucrative business. Unfortunately, sending children to their abuse, rape, battery, murder, sex trafficking, and pornography production has become a lucrative business. Unfortunately, sending children to their abuse, rape, battery, murder, sex trafficking, and pornography production has become a lucrative business.
I wonder how many views I'd get if I set that on loop right there and just let it play 24/7. I wonder how many people would wake the fuck up. I might do that, John. I might let this run on loop. Create a short little video and let it run on loop for 24 hours. See what happens.
Good idea.
I would not have known about family courts except for my sister's divorce. One moment, her children are thriving under her care with perfect...
I would not have known about family courts except for my sister's situation. And see, this is why I say every one of us has to have some kind of involvement in this because it affects us one way or another, either directly or indirectly through friends, family, associations, no matter what. We all observe and hear about this stuff. We need to start standing up.
Perfect physical and psychological health, and she's praised around the neighborhood for her parenting skills, consulted by other parents and teachers. The next moment, her previously absentee father files for divorce, and her children are seized in a police raid without warning on their legitimately assigned weekend to be together, and the violently abusive father who almost killed each of his 2 children by head injury gets sole custody. And the mother has not seen or heard from them, the children she raised since birth, for the next 4 years. Not even 1 minute. And what is the reason that the family court gave? She was supposedly mentally ill, even though no licensed professional ever raised any concerns. Subsequently, she has been evaluated by 11 world-renowned psychiatric experts, some of them consultants to the United Nations, the U.S. Supreme Court, and the International Criminal Court, who all unanimously said she had excellent mental health and exceptional talent in parenting.
Imagine that. Imagine that.
Some of them consultants to the United Nations, evaluated by 11 world-renowned psychiatric concerns. Subsequently, she has been evaluated by 11 world-renowned psychiatric experts, some of them consultants to the United Nations, the U.S. Supreme Court, and the International Criminal Court, who all unanimously said she had excellent mental health and exceptional talent in parenting. Subsequently, she has been evaluated by 11 world-renowned psychiatric experts, some of them consultants to the United Nations, the U.S. Supreme Court, and the International Criminal Court, who all unanimously said she had excellent mental health and exceptional talent in parenting. But none of this mattered. Only one unlicensed and unqualified associate counselor with a master's degree contradicted them all. And this is one report.
Come on up, Max.
In addition to these so-called experts, family courts make use of guardians ad litem. In my sister's case, the guardian ad litem lied or perjured 600 documented times in her case, and even co-conspired with her ex-husband to attempt to cause her demise. Putting her courts make use of guardians ad litem. In my sister's case, the guardian ad litem lied or perjured 600 documented times in her case, and even co-conspired with her ex-husband to attempt to cause her demise. Called experts, family courts make use of guardians ad litem. In my sister's case, the guardian ad litem lied or perjured 600 documented times in her case, and even co-conspired with her ex-husband to attempt to cause her demise. Called experts, family courts make use of guardians ad litem. In my sister's case, the guardian ad litem lied or perjured 600 documented times in her case, and even co-conspired with her ex-husband to attempt to cause her demise, putting her in the intensive care unit. But in the end, Judge Jane Galena Mecca only protected her, the guardian ad litem. In fact, the judge now regularly appoints this guardian ad litem, Evelyn Asirios, in almost every case she presides over. For these reasons, we are
knowing that she lied 600 times in documentation in one case. Remember the guy earlier that spoke about 18 U.S.C. 4, misprision of felony. See, they're obligated to report that kind of stuff. Instead, they are working with them. Understand what is happening here, folks. There is no way in hell if they did that over me and my child, no, I'm killing people. Knowing that you lied 600 times and the judge went along with it, somebody's dying. Thank God I'm beyond those children anymore. If I'd understood this shit when it was happening, oh yeah. Go ahead, John.
I wouldn't want a psychiatrist telling me I'm mental.
Yeah, really. Well, the thing here, though, is that she's got world-renowned psychiatrists, multiple ones, saying, no, she's completely sane. And the court says, well, we're not going to listen to those guys. We're going to take the unlicensed associate we have and his opinion and put it in the record. That's treason. And them putting and using those associations without licensing and proper knowledge and stuff, that's sedition. They're working coherently together against the people, violating their oath at the highest degree.
Oh, okay. I thought the court appointed its own psychiatrist. Okay.
No. Yeah, exactly. They're using their own sources that aren't even licensed.
We're now pursuing the impeachment of Jane Galena Mecca. But I'm sure this is a familiar story, and it is correct to address this as a systemic problem. After participating in approximately 50, this is a familiar story, and it is correct to address this as a systemic problem. This is a familiar story, and it is correct to address this as a systemic problem. sure this is a familiar story, and it is correct to address this as a systemic problem.
Systemic.
After participating in approximately
Across the board, without fail, in every court. Just like there are no good police, none of these people are good. None.
50 family court cases, I've come to learn that my sister's situation
Prove to me otherwise. Because if there are, you could look back through their records and see that they've done none of this stuff. Even one instance of taking a child who isn't involved in the adoption and foster care system proves they are not good. I don't care if they are using the excuse, well, they didn't know. They're supposed to know. That goes to their competency. So if there's anyone out there using this system in a legal sense for their advantage against biological moms and dads with heir apparents and using that term child to take them into these administrative courts, I don't give a fuck about your ignorance. Not one bit.
is not at all unusual. Cases may vary widely, but family courts all across the country produce almost the same result when abuse is alleged, which is the vast majority of cases.
Greetings, Max. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing all right. Yourself?
Good, good. So how long you been watching? What do you got to say so far?
I just come in about a minute or two ago, so I don't even know what she's talking about.
Well, right now we're talking about the family courts and how abusive they are and how destructive they are to the family foundation. And it's appalling because it's systemic and they are in fact totally lying and violating every ethic under the constitutional oaths that they took.
Now, are there bonuses for them getting children into foster homes?
Well, there are certain...
The foster system itself is a paid system, so...
Correct. It's a Title IV-D program system, and there are incentives, is what they call them.
Custody cases. That is, custody is almost invariably taken from a stable, nurturing parent who are well bonded with their children to be given.
System has to have a purpose, right?
The more clear-cut the case, the more draconian this formula. And the stronger the evidence the good parent presents, the more retaliation they face. I've not once seen supervised visits be applied to the dangerous parent, and if the children resist, as healthy children would, they're sent to reunification camps, which are improved torture camps, intended to extinguish any drive to resist their own abuse. And the same holds for the parent. And if the children resist, as healthy children would, they're sent to reunification camps, which are improved torture camps, intended to extinguish any drive to resist their own abuse. And if the children resist, as healthy children would, they're sent to reunification camps, which are improved torture camps.
Where are they sent to?
Extinguish any drive to resist their own abuse. And the same parent. And if the children resist, as healthy children would, they're sent to reunification camps, which are
reunification camps.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Torture camps intended to extinguish any drive to resist their own abuse. And the same holds true for reunification therapy.
It's where they teach them how to listen to mom and dad.
Okay.
And if mom and dad get mad, you can always call the police.
Yeah.
See, that's the disempowering of the parents' ability to discipline back in the 50s and 60s with the child protection laws. It told the parents that they could no longer discipline their children.
Yeah, it depended on where you were, too. If you had a conservative or a liberal.
Well, again, Max, though, it goes down to the definitions. If the people would have read those laws and understood that the term child means a child that is in the adoption and foster care system, then they would know that those laws don't apply to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess
it's all about raising a child up in the ways of the Lord. Spare not the rod.
Yep. Me and many of my friends, a few of them actually, have asked the police about spanking children and disciplining children. And they said, no, you're allowed to discipline your children.
Yep. Absolutely. You just can't abuse them.
That's right.
And when people come to check out abuse, and they're from the state system, sorry, you're in a state capacity looking for people that are in the adoption and foster care system.
Yeah. I had
this is my biological child. You have no authority here. You might have a concern, And
Yeah.
you can certainly bring it up to a grand jury if you'd like, but you ain't gonna fuck around here with your fucking state authority. Go ahead.
Yeah. When I was when I was with my young daughter, they sent the child services because she had bruises on her knees, and I guess somebody thought I was whipping her knees or something. So, let the nice lady in. I sat her down at the table, called my daughter. She came running and jumped up on the chair on her knees.
Yep. There you go. Perfect example why her knees are bruised.
Yeah. Lady said, well, I don't think I really need to be here.
Yep. Yep.
Please proceed.
Thank you. I have often compared family courts to the prisons that I have studied for decades. The medieval barbarism that civilized society cannot imagine happens within them. Those who enter are grievously maltreated, and all manner of human rights violations occur with no accountability because of a lack of transparency. Decades. Medieval barbarism that civilized society cannot imagine happens within them. Those who enter are grievously maltreated, and all manner of human rights violations occur with no accountability because of a lack of transparency. Decades. Medieval barbarism that civilized society cannot imagine happens within them. Those who enter are grievously maltreated, and all manner of human rights violations occur with no accountability because of a lack of transparency. Torture is routine, and even murder goes unpunished. In family courts, judges have the authority to seal their cases, and this essentially gives them star chamber-like secrecy. Without a jury or any oversight, what occurs within is usually unmoored from the law, especially with the exceptional discretion that people have talked about, the family judges have. This was initially granted so that judges could exercise benevolence with vulnerable families, but a 120-year chronicle has shown that it has rather been used for malevolence quite regularly. Moored from the law, especially with the exceptional discretion that people have talked about, the family judges have. This was initially granted so that initially granted so that judges could exercise benevolence with vulnerable families, but a 120-year chronicle has shown that it has rather been used for malevolence. This was initially granted so that judges could exercise benevolence with vulnerable families, but a 120-year chronicle has shown that it has rather been used for malevolence quite regularly. Initially granted so that judges could exercise benevolence with vulnerable families, but a 120-year chronicle has shown that it has rather been used for malevolence quite regularly.
So how many more years do we need to go?
Yeah. Right.
To have a record that shows prevalent malevolence. That means it prevails. It prevails over the equity. It prevails over the benevolence. It's a majority. How long are we going to let this go before we rise up and condemn it?
When tragic deaths happen all too often, the public assumes that there must have been extenuating circumstances or that these institutions are doing their best under difficult circumstances. They do not imagine the family courts actually facilitated the deaths or even forced them on families and mobilized all their resources to prevent. I've come to call family courts anti-courts, where
there's so many outright stale cases,
established science.
You know, just case upon case that could be made against public officials. You know, nothing's done. Absolutely nothing.
Well, I would venture to say, and I'm pretty fucking stout on it here, that 95% of those cases should have never gone in those courts. At minimum, 95%. You know, the 95% that they win should never have been in the courts.
Conflicts of interest replace any semblance of impartiality, and the greatest injustices done to families are committed in the name of justice. If a hospital or clinic were deliberately killing rather than curing people, it would immediately be shuttered. But when courts do this, there's no relief because of judicial immunity, and we have learned that judges cannot be relied upon to hold other judges accountable. Instead, prisons and family courts
and understand their judicial immunity once they break their oath. Sorry, you lost all immunity. There's no general immunity or nothing. When you break an oath, like it said, like the gentleman said earlier, hey, I don't want to have to hang you for treason. So I'm going to be equitous and I'm going to forgive you. But from here on out, it's lead us not into temptation and deliver us from evil. And since you already show that you can't handle it, you're removed from the bench. You may hold some other civil office or civil position, but you can never hold a public office again. That's for damn sure.
because of their secrecy and impunity, have become magnets for violent, sadistic, and psychopathic individuals who relish exercising power over others.
I don't care if you have to live a pauper's life and work your ass off every day of your life in hard manual labor just to make an income. Because technically what's happening here, guys, They're destroying your family. That means they're destroying the future generations. They're taking your heirs generations down the line. Therefore, I'm coming after you, your children, your children's children's, your children's children's children. If you're going to be intent on destroying my legacy, I'm going to destroy yours, and I have no problem with it. Matter of fact, I'd much rather let you live in it than have you hung for treason. Understand me, pathetic fuckers. Excuse my language and passion here today, but this is the bottom line, folks. You have to stand up as moms and dads to protect yourself and what you put forth. That includes your children, your heir apparents, theirs, and theirs on down the line. If you don't, it's all destroyed and it's your own doing. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Stand up and start doing your research. Do not believe me. Do not believe the neighbor. Do not believe the government. For crying out loud, don't even believe your mother. Do your research so you know. That way, if anybody's wrong, it's not going to be you. Mom used to tell me all the time, Keith, you always think you got to be right. No, Mom. I just don't like speaking up and sounding like a fucking babbling idiot like 95% of the other people I listen to.
Those who do not go along with the culture usually are threatened or ousted. Prison guards may be seen as poorly trained individuals who come from similar backgrounds as the prisoners, but family court players are even more dangerous since they're driven by a $50 to $175 billion industry hidden beneath the power of being called a court. Ousted. Prison guards may be seen as poorly trained individuals who come from similar backgrounds as the prisoners, but family court players are even more dangerous since they're driven by a $50 to $175 billion industry hidden beneath the power of being called a court. May be seen as poorly trained individuals who come from similar backgrounds as the prisoners, but family court players are even more dangerous since they're driven by a $50 to $175 billion industry hidden beneath the power of being called a court. The culture usually are threatened or ousted. Prison guards may be seen as poorly trained individuals who come from similar backgrounds as the prisoners, but family court players are even more dangerous since they're driven by a $50 to $175 billion industry hidden beneath the power of being called a court.
Hidden beneath the power of being called a court. And that's it. That's the only power the court has, is being called a court. You have to voluntarily appear for them to have any further power. And even then, you can direct that power.
Now there's a bunch of statistics that I could cite out.
Know thyself. Give them legal notice. And then when they want to call you into court, they've already got legal notice. And you've already got proper standing.
I'll submit it in.
Well, if you would, just get the statistics to our office and we'll appreciate that.
I will do so. This is all scientifically supported.
Okay.
The public is unaware of the epidemic of violence occurring through the family courts because judges threaten reporters and journalists as well to control their coverage. When a major magazine published an interview with me, the judge in my sister's case issued an order for them to immediately unpublish the article. When their legal department sternly rebuked the judge for violating the First Amendment, she rather returned to her drawing board and issued a second order. It turned out that even the Washington Post had shamed her 10 years earlier for trying to order the takedown of another article, but because of impunity, she remains undaunted and her unconstitutional orders are continue. The end result is that this magazine and others vow never to cover family court stories again. The United
That's
Nations,
a mistake.
excuse me?
As we've said earlier, Justice Brandeis.
That's right.
How about a little sunshine on this? And frankly, ma'am, you put more sunshine on this than many of the people that have testified over the last 3 hearings.
Well, I've been in a lot of cases and I've examined all the evidence. It's not insufficiency of evidence. It's not ignorance or incompetence. It's quite despairingly deliberate.
I appreciate that. And
I'll never to cover family court stories again. The United
that's
Nations,
a mistake.
excuse me, unconstitutional orders are continue. The end result is that this magazine and others vow never to cover family court stories again. The United
That's
Nations
a mistake.
are continue. The end result is that this magazine and others vow never to cover family court stories again. The United
That's a
Nations
mistake.
are continue. The end result is that this magazine and others vow never to cover family court stories again. The United
That's
Nations,
a mistake.
excuse me.
And that's why I'm saying we have to speak out. See, they're slowly shutting the media down on speaking out on anything that is good for us. Therefore, we have to learn and we have to speak out on it. So we have to understand, again, like I said earlier, the language that they're using, and quit presuming it applies to us. Know thyself. Set thine house in order. Have the proper communications.
As we've said earlier, Justice Brandeis.
That's right.
How about a little sunshine on this? And frankly, ma'am, you put more sunshine on this than many of the people that have testified over the last 3 hearings.
Well, I've been in a lot of cases and I've examined all the evidence. It's not insufficiency of evidence. It's not ignorance or incompetence. It's quite despairingly deliberate.
I appreciate that. And we really have run out of time with you. I'd let you talk the rest of the day if I could get away with it. But we do have a couple questions for you. All right. At least I know everybody else is chomping at the bit. One major question for me is, in your professional opinion, with all that you've heard and what you've clearly lived through, and I presume that your sister's case is out of New York? Or
New Jersey, actually.
New Jersey.
County.
Okay. Same with us out in the West. Do you think or believe that judges have been taken in by this psycho, I'm going to call it psychobabble, but you called it pseudoscience, pseudopsychology, almost in a spin.
I'll call it psychobabble too, because that's exactly what it is. Once you comprehend what's going on in those courts, you'll understand the psychological aspect of what they're saying and realize the babble in it. You'll understand that they're using multiple languages, different grammar styles, trying to mix jurisdictions and everything under color of law, color of authority. They have no authority. They're babbling. And you sit there and say, yeah, I understand English. I did the same thing, folks.
Bengali kind of way where they just totally disregard a mountain of evidence in front of them for the shiny object in the room that is somehow overtaken the thought process of the judge. Could you speak to that?
I would say the direction was actually the opposite, that judges go looking for experts who will give them the whatever theory that will allow them to give the children to their abusers. And parental alienation, for example, is one which has been used as a tactic to deflect from and deny abuse allegations.
And that's because the shiny object in the room is their wallet and the paychecks in the future from those various different investments in the court registry investment system that is destroying the very family. And that's the destruction of the finances of both partners, mom and dad, and the poverty that the child will grow up in because of it, no matter who the mom and dad is and who he ends up being in custody of, if he ends up in the custody of either mom and dad. If
I actually say that it's a pretext for predatory alienation of the good parent.
Okay. Have you ever heard of AFCC?
Yes. Unfortunately, they are quite driven by the parental alienation theory, and I believe that is because it brings in profit.
And that's the American Family and Children's Council.
Well, all right, you jumped right to the next question. I'll go ahead and put it out there. It occurs to me that this organization, from everything that I've seen, read, really has a profit motive that it's driven by, not necessarily a best interest of the child. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Okay. And actually, very distressingly, not only this prevalent in all 50 U.S. states, I would say, and I've personally been in cases in about 20 to 30 states, and it has been used as a business model, exported abroad, to the point where the United Nations Human Rights Council put out a major report in 2023 alerting this family court problem as a public health crisis because of the model that's been exported from.
My apologies, that is not AFCC. AFCC is Association of Family and Conciliation Courts. My apologies. Association of Family and Conciliation Courts. Yeah. And she's saying they evidently don't have enough power or know how to do anything. So.
I presume that report is online, that we can pull it down. If you would, could you give us the report title for that so that we can pull that in?
It's by the UN Special Rapporteur on violence against children.
Okay, we'll definitely make that part of our report. One last.
And actually, when I looked it up, it's a UN Rapporteur's report on violence against women and girls, not women and children. But again, it relates to the same concept as going into these family courts and stuff. Welfare is generally for women and children. And in this, she just, those reports relate more to sex trafficking, which relates to women and girls more than it does boys, but it does cover the women and children.
Last question I have before I turn over to my colleagues. Have you heard of something called C.O.W.A.R.D.S?
Yes,
What's your opinion of court-ordered behavioral intervention?
I find it to be coercive. In fact, I call it torture, and it is intended to inculcate in children that that what they see, heard, and have experienced is untrue, and it's a form of thought reform in my view.
You know where that comes from, right?
I find it to be coercive. In fact, I call it torture, and it is intended to inculcate in children that that what they see, heard, and have experienced is untrue, and it's a form of thought reform in my view. I find it to be coercive. In fact, I call it torture, and it is intended to inculcate in children that that what they see, heard, and have experienced is untrue, and it's a form of thought reform in my view.
You know where that comes from.
Indoctrination.
So is that after they have been abused or something, or?
Upon being put into this system, and this is the way this system is mechanized, is to indoctrinate the children. That's the main target. And in order to do that, they target the finances of both mom and dad in the both divorce and custody side of things, and literally destroy finances of both parents if they can, which is the financial destruction of the child as well. It's the overtaking of that estate.
Comes from, right? Kobe?
No.
Phoenix, Arizona.
I see.
Thank you, ma'am. Representative Keschel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So have you ever been called as an expert witness in an Arizona family court? Because I know you said 20 some states.
Yes, in fact, I have.
Okay. With what you're hearing today from these people and your experience with the Arizona courts, do you feel that the judges are considering actual forensic evidence in any of these cases?
In my experience, no. I will have to honestly say that out of 50 cases, only one went the right way after unbelievable amounts of argument and.
So that's 1 out of 50 would equate to 2 out of 100. So that's 98%.
Yeah.
I think I was pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Kind of lowballed it, huh?
A little bit.
Fighting, actually. I usually come in after things have gotten bad, but I have to say that no amount of evidence matters. A 4-year-old who has been claimed to have been raped, a positive rape kit, 3 medical professionals have interviewed her and called her credible, and burn marks, all kinds of injury marks. It was still considered unsubstantial, or whatever CPS says in these cases, who has been claimed to have been raped, a positive rape kit, 3 medical professionals have interviewed her and called her credible, and burn marks, all kinds of injury marks. It was still considered unsubstantial for a 4-year-old who has been claimed to have been raped, a positive rape kit, 3 medical professionals have interviewed her and called her credible, and burn marks, all kinds of injury marks. It was still considered unsubstantial for who has been claimed to have been raped, a positive rape kit, 3 medical professionals have interviewed her and called her credible, and burn marks, all kinds of injury marks. It was still considered unsubstantial, or whatever CPS says in these cases.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, doctor. Are you now, or have you ever worked with a U.S. attorney having to do with cases related to this? And I'll have a follow-up question to that, related to your field of expertise.
I have not. I've tried to reach out to a number of authorities, and including law enforcement, and my experience has been that they've been either unresponsive or protective of the judges.
Do you know what?
And see, that's that First Amendment right to redress the government for grievances. And when they don't respond, again, see, they have an obligation to fulfill. And under the First Amendment right to redress the government, a non-response is not fulfilling that obligation.
Yeah.
Greetings, Brother Grey Wolf. Washington, Melvin, how you doing?
I know that we have that in Canada.
Oops, we missed him. He dropped out. I don't know what went on there. But he was supposed to join us at the beginning. Well, he dropped out again. There he is. Greetings, brother. How you doing today?
I'm all right.
Good. You're a little late, brother.
Yeah, I know. Sorry about this. My bad.
That's all right. We're going to finish up with this one. And we're basically talking about the public education system, indoctrination, not just us, but our parents, bringing us up in this way. And when we turn around and do the same thing with our children, sending them off to the public education institutions that are trying to teach them about sexual context like butt plugs and stuff. And it just doesn't seem right. And I'm trying to urge people that it just doesn't seem right to me that we should be sending our children off to these public education systems, particularly so early in life, where they get indoctrinated into the manualization rather than bringing them up in their spiritualization first in the ways of the Lord, and they become indoctrinated to that false patriarch. And it's the destruction of the family foundation, folks. Set thine house in order. Nowhere in order does the government come in. Nowhere. It says God, then the head of the household, which is the man, and then the second of the household, which is the woman, and that's man and woman, not husband and wife. And then the third is the heir apparents, no matter how many of them there are. First in line of succession is the youngest of them or the oldest of the males. First in succession of dowry is the oldest of the females. So let's think about this, and we're going to move on. This is a psychiatrist talking about the systemic abuse and intent, purposeful abuse in these family courts.
Judges overlooking, the judges are overlooking abuse by the foster parents too.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll attest to that. I've been abused many times in foster care, and it doesn't matter what the kid says. The only thing that happens is you just get moved to another foster home, and that other foster home might be better or might be worse. You never know. It's a big gamble.
That a lot is going on.
Thank you. Dr. Lee, thank you for coming. If you wouldn't mind sending me your testimony, there's a lot there that I need to digest. There's quite a bit there. But one of the things that has gone back and forth is this parent alienation. And there's been, they've bankrupted families. What I've heard, yes, they're trying to change the mindset of the children. And when I first heard of it, I thought of re-education camps like North Korea, the way I was listening to that. But I've had people say, well, no, actually, you need to take that into consideration. No, you don't. For your professional opinion, is parent alienation truly a syndrome or a clinical diagnosis at all?
Not at all. It's not taught in any mental health educational program. It only exists in family courts. And the cases that are labeled parental alienation, if they were to come out of family court, they would just be clear-cut child abuse, domestic violence, without any ambiguity, and they would be adjudicated in a matter of weeks in criminal court. Any mental health educational program, it only exists in family courts. And the cases that are labeled parental alienation, if they were to come out of family court, they would just be clear-cut child abuse, domestic violence, without any ambiguity, and they would be adjudicated in a matter of weeks in criminal court. Educational program, it only exists in family courts, and the cases that are labeled parental alienation, if they were to come out of family court, they would just be clear-cut child abuse, domestic violence, without any ambiguity, and they would be adjudicated in a matter of weeks in criminal court.
So you understand what they're saying there. There is no definition in legal context for parental alienation. It is only used in family courts.
Therefore, to camp for it, eh?
Yeah, so they have no authority under their own opinion of what parental alienation is, because it's never defined. It remains ambiguous amongst them because each of them uses their own definition or discernment for what parental alienation is in any particular case for their benefit. And they are the ones that are producing the parental alienation. Like she said earlier, these kids going to these reintroduction camps and stuff to be reintroduced back into the family unit are indoctrinated into believing authority. Nowhere are we teaching our children the spirituality of know thyself, I am. Nowhere. Nope.
Mr. Chair, to that point, do you feel, have you ever witnessed in any of the states that you've testified in that there are judges that disregard the whole parental alienation? Because I feel like they're taking real physical abuse versus the abusive parent saying parental alienation. Are you seeing, I guess I'm looking for hope today. Have you seen any judges within the family court that see that for what it is? Or is it just so much the standard that, do you kind of see what I'm saying? With
I've actually seen.
Yeah, I'm losing hope too. Because the people aren't waking up.
I mean, you know what? I'm reading. I went and got the manual for the Social Security Administration data manual, and it was explaining that the father had the first claim when it came to the children or the estate. So a lot of this is going to be on the fathers in particular.
Absolutely. That's that part of setting that house in order.
It's really going to come down to the men on this one. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause, I mean, if you take it for face value, you got a woman up here standing up here telling America what's going on when actually, where are the men in charge of this? And as you can see, there's not that many of them. So it's up to us to step up and get that shit done. When I say, you need to be filing that claim on that state file number. That's the first thing any man should do with himself and his children. Is lean in that state file number of his and his children, and making sure that it gets to the commissioner of the Social Security Administration and the attorney. It goes from there first, and it got to go there first. So until that's done, all this gonna continue. They can keep. I mean, they can keep crying about it, but until that record is corrected, then that's going to continue to be projected throughout society.
Right.
Everywhere.
And it says, this is, and it goes for you gentlemen, like we're talking about, gentlemen first and foremost, and this is relative to the Selective Service as well. And it says right here, and it's got the information where I registered under Selective Service back in the day. And then it says, change of information form. If any information shown is incorrect, make corrections, sign and return this top portion to the Selective Service system. So you're supposed to tear this off, and it's a dotted line, just like a coupon. And then you keep this bottom portion as evidence in the meantime while the corrections are being made up here. And you get to put your stamp on here for proper transfer of the estate, because that's what we're doing with the Selective Service, gentlemen, is we're correcting the estate. And we're going to correct it through an address change with a proper P.O. box for the estate. And that's a contract with the Postal Service, so that anything going through that estate is now tied to the general ledger, because they are the accountants responsible for any out of balance accounts for the master trust.
You're right.
General ledger.
Because when I called the Selective Service, they told me after 10 years or so, once you get a certain age, they have to send it to the National Archive.
Right. And remember, guys, that's where you sign up for Selective Service, is at the post office. Same place you get your passport. You go there to
D.U.M.B.
Yep, to sign up for Selective Service. Greetings, Mary. How you doing today?
Hi, Keith and friends. I'm okay.
Hi, Mary.
I love this show. I love all your shows.
Thank you.
I went
Appreciate
through
it.
court. I went through court in Litchfield, Connecticut, Superior Court. I did two do-it-yourself divorces, and there was children and equity, and we ironed it out. But I definitely related to what you were saying in terms of they want to destroy both the father and the mother, and they've certainly done that to me, or tried. But
Until they get on board, until the mother and the father has to be on the same page, understanding the state is the trustee and the bank is the guardian. Until that concept gets in both heads, they're going to do their job as the barristers that keep you out of the kingdom until you stand firm. They're going to do their job. I know they're gonna do their job. They don't do nothing else. They gonna do what the system is designed to do. To keep our insular possessions, protect our insular possessions, and make money off that franchise. One day, license it to someone else. They're gonna go collect their debt. That's something the military is gonna go do. Is good. They're gonna go collect the debts. That's who's leasing those logistical posts.
Right, and that's the state licensing and driver's license. Understand, folks, you have to go forth with that birth registration, that birth certificate, and a social security card to a DMV to get the driver's license or state ID. Again, like the selective service, you can do the same thing. You can go sign up for selective service at the Department of Motor Vehicle, which is a subsequent agency to the Department of Transportation. Commerce means traffic, trade, or transportation. They're all commercial. So what you're doing is you're merely licensing something.
Yep. It's just franchise and licensing. That's basically what it is. Unless you're going to be on the international side, anything domestic, they're going to tax you. You're going to be marginalized. That's what they're going to do to anything domestic in the United States. They're going to marginalize it with levies and attachments. That's their number one goal.
And that's that insurance scheme, Medicare qualified government employee, Social Security insurance. You are placed in surety.
Let's just move away from that phrase because of the stigma around it. Not so much because they denounce it, as all the major health associations have done, but because it was first parental alienation syndrome in the 1980s that got so much criticism and lack of scientific support that it started to be turned into other types of terminologies, whatever they call it. It's a pretext, as I said, for predatory alienation of goodwill.
Yeah, it seems like a squishy balloon. No matter where you grab it, it's always kind of morphing into something else.
Yes,
like
one thing I wish to say that...
And that's exactly what these courts do. They morph into different things as you go. Like I said, they use multiple grammars with multiple jurisdictions so they can just wiggle around and say, well, no, it doesn't mean that. It means this. And that's the problem. That is the misfeasance, malfeasance of office. That is the sedition and coherent working together in treasonous factors. And that's why I say we need to get rid of the people that are corrupt in that system by filling them with people that actually know what's going on and have that duty-bound ethic and moral standard that they won't do that, no matter how much somebody might pay them.
In terms of solutions, is education of the public is extremely important, and also open courts. But I would not so much emphasize education of judges, because if the incentive to give children to the wrong parent is still there, then no amount of education, no amount of correction of theories will help.
So
exactly what I said as well. I don't believe we need to hang them, but there's no amount of correction that will allow me to believe that they could continue holding that office. They've already violated that and no longer have the capability of upholding the promise of a public office. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I most definitely
one,
agree.
the court is incapable of being a super parent. It has seized that responsibility. The second is, and I know we need to move on to the rest of our witnesses, but it occurs to me that there is quite literally no test right up front to establish, and we've got this in Arizona law, 25403, 12 factors that are supposed to be considered in the award of parenting time and the award of custody. Yet the court took it upon itself under Gutierrez to say, well, the temporary orders don't count because they're just temporary. Yet they can go on for a child's lifetime until they age out of the system.
Exactly. I think that is.
And see, this is the importance, folks. I want you guys to understand. You know, you sit here and you look at me in all of my passion and think that I'm this angry old man. And if you don't understand my firsthand experience within this system and why I'm so fucking angry and why I don't see why you, as a simple message, as simple adults who do have that 8th grade reading comprehension and can understand that simple language, don't get up and do something about it. Somehow in your simplicity, you think that this world is going to pay you without fulfilling the obligation you already have of being stewards to the life and not to the fiction. And here you are paying tribute to that false patriarch, every last one of you that's got an ID or a driver's license in your pocket. I urge you to take it out and see if the first name on there isn't the state of Iowa, state of Missouri. That's a claim of who your daddy is. You know, it's the data elements. Are you the fifth element that goes along with the other four elements? Or are you the fictional element believing you're the person in all of the data elements? It really is simple. If you think they're your heir apparents, then it should be apparent that you should educate them on that and know what the apparent heir is subject to. The estate? What's the estate? When you pass on and you believe your heir apparent is going to receive your estate, how are you taking care of that? How are you making sure of that if you're paying tribute to a false patriarch who's going to say, well, I'll just do that for you? We'll make sure it's fair. Ain't none of it been fair. 93 cases, like I said earlier, in 33 years. Wasn't none of it fair. Because if it was fair, they'd have recognized through their own definitions that I ain't that damn resident. I can't be a resident. I don't have an oath of office. Therefore, I'm not a resident determined in the state of Iowa under their code for income tax purposes. See, that's what helps me confine the reason for taxes is you have to be that Medicare qualified government employee. Taxes and insurance go together. So let's get back to it.
Is the goal that the children are taken for no reason at all. In my sister's case, she was given no reason. They were taken by force by a police SWAT team, and I believe that was to maximally traumatize and maximally incapacitate her and the children's ability to fight back. And then there's no.
Did you say that the child was taken by a SWAT team?
Yes.
From a mother
Who was simply
unarmed,
carrying out her parenting time with them.
unarmed in her
No
home.
warning, no concerns about her parenting ability whatsoever. It's only the father who was on a restraining order earlier for slamming his children's, at this point, the 7-year-old son's head against a window, almost crushing his skull. And yet he was just in the process of regaining parenting time, and that was when the custody was switched.
This is quite.
And they gave custody to the very man that slammed that child and busted his head. Kind of like the same situation with me. 4 brothers and sisters put in foster care. Didn't understand why. But we did understand we were being abused, hurt. We didn't understand the term abuse, but we knew we were afraid of daddy and he would get explosive. And they put us in custody of that same drunk alcoholic without fixing the alcoholic, and merely because he'd gotten remarried, and now they have a marriage license that they can control things as well. So the state was again able to step in and control the marriage situation. And the marriage situation provided for control of 2 people plus the 4 or 5 children. So that's 7 rather than a single mom with 5 children, which would have been 6, particularly since mom didn't want 5 children by herself. She was going to go out and look for a new man and create a new family and didn't give a fuck about any 5 of us. So automatically the state, sure, yeah, we'll take care of that. We'll make it fair. See, I think the fair thing was, again, through all my contemplation, 13 brothers and sisters on my dad's side, 7 brothers and sisters on my mom's side. You would think between the 20 of them, some of them here and there could have taken in at least one of us and kept us communally together in family events and groups and communication throughout the entire time of trying to help Dad put his own shit back together so he could have custody of us in a proper mindset. But no, society doesn't work on building the family and putting it back together. You are misinformed that it takes a village to raise a child. It's a true man that knows how to set thine house in order and let no village interfere, no matter what its democratic feelers say.
Quite an indictment of the system, madam.
And no plenary hearing for going on 4 years.
No plenary hearing. Understand that term. Plenary hearing. Plenary being of a meeting to be attended by all participants at a conference or assembly who otherwise meet in smaller groups. The House is expected to bring a legislative procedures bill to a plenary meeting. In other words, before all participants. Okay? What do you guys got to say on that so far? We got one more short video I'm going to be bringing up. Anything?
Pretty disturbing stuff.
Well, I hope people are going to pay attention to it because, like I said earlier, I might play portions of this on a loop so people see it.
Yeah.
And hopefully gain some attention to it. I think it's a very powerful video that people need to pay attention to. And if they do, you know, the only thing I can do is do my best to help that. So I think if I run certain portions of this on a 24-hour loop video, might catch some attention.
Yeah, you might.
All right, well, let's look at the last one. It's 8 dangerous myths about parental alienation. Okay, and this is the Anti-Alienation Project. You can find them on Facebook. It's a wonderful lady. I think she's got some great views on things. Very good mindset. Still researching her, but so far what I've seen, she's pretty spot on. So let's take a look at the Anti-Alienation Project, 8 dangerous myths about parental alienation. And she's telling you from a child's point of view because she went through it herself. Misinformation about her daddy caused her to alienate from him out of dislike because of the lies that she was told and not realizing they were lies. This is much like I was saying about the treason and sedition with the public officials. This is more along the aspects of, again, setting thine house in order. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to go forth and want to build a family, make sure not only are yourself honorable, but the partner that you're selecting, the woman or man on the other side that you're selecting, has equal honorability, equal integrity, equal critical thought processes so you can criticize each other appropriately and build each other up and not tear each other down, because that's the problem. I don't think people have the true concept of a man and woman coming into communion under a covenant of God. I think they've got the words all mixed and mashed and believe in things like marriage, which is a fictional construct for commerce and has nothing to do with a covenant that you may already or should already have with some sort of God. And as a man, you meet another woman with the same covenant. And so you join together in a communion, and that covenant stands. You now have 3 witnesses under private contract of 2 parties in the same contract with a third party, their God. You understand the power of that kind of covenant. It defeats any power of any contract without the word of both yourself and the one that you pose as your God. Because even without your wife or your husband, you have the power that is ordained and sanctified by the very one who knew you before he formed you in the belly, whether you be man, woman, male, female, whatever.
Parental alienation
A child of God.
is when one parent
For there is but one Father which art in heaven.
manipulates their child to reject their other loving parent. This happened to
Oops.
me around the age of 9, and I rejected my dad because of lies and false allegations that my mom made me believe. I rejected him for 20 years, not 20 days, not 20 months, 20 years. And I'm here to tell you, parental alienation is real, but like most other forms of abuse, it hides behind myths. So today, we're breaking these myths wide open. Let's talk about what this psychological abuse really is and why so much misinformation is keeping families broken, keeping children from receiving the help and protection they so desperately deserve and need. Here are 8 myths that need to be debunked, and I'm here to debunk them. Let's go. Myth number 1, parental alienation is simply a tactic that abusive fathers use in court to get their kids back. Let's start with the elephant in the courtroom. Yes, parental alienation can be misused, especially in high conflict custody battles, but exploiters can exploit anything. Some abusers.
And as we already know, because there is no real definition of parental alienation, the use of the term is abuse. No matter how you use it, because there is no place for it in law. So we have to understand it for its psychological construct only in a scientific venue. Okay.
Have falsely claimed alienation to avoid accountability. That does happen, and I want to be clear. That's disgusting. But 2 things can be true at once. The abuse of the
So what she's saying here is that the use of the tactics which prove an alienation of one parent or another, that is the foundation. That is true. Women do use lies about the daddy to their children to help their children learn to hate their daddies, and vice versa. Daddies do it too. What the statistics are, I don't know. I just know that it happens on both sides. Just like it happens in the courts and they use it against both parents. A lot of times one or the other parent is using it against the other parent, if not both of them. While one's in custody of the other one, even during visits, they're talking bad about mom or dad. Whereas the one that has custody is generally talking bad about the other partner as well. How well do you think children are going to grow up like that?
concept does not make the concept itself invalid. That's like saying that false reports of domestic violence mean that domestic violence doesn't exist. That's like saying false reports of sexual harassment means that sexual harassment doesn't exist. That's absurd. We know that's absurd. According to research that is published in the journal Children and Youth Services Review, over 22 million parents in the US report being alienated from their children. So let's stop painting this as a courtroom tactic. It's real psychological abuse, and kids like me live with the scars. Myth number 2. Parental alienation is a debunked theory invented by a pedophile named Richard Gardner. This one gets thrown around online a lot, and it's very misleading. Yes, Richard Gardner coined the term parental alienation syndrome in the 1980s. And yes, some of his views, especially on abuse, were deeply problematic and rightly so rejected. But here's the truth. This abuse did not begin with Gardner, and it didn't die with Gardner either. As long as personality disorders have existed, so has this abuse. And the fact is that modern psychology no longer truth. This abuse did not begin with Gardner, and it didn't die with Gardner either. As long as personality disorders have existed, so has this abuse. Truth. This abuse did not begin with Gardner, and it didn't die with Gardner either. As long as personality disorders have existed, so has this abuse. And the fact is that modern psychology no longer relies.
And in parental situations, it's more seated, I believe, in jealousy and control, whether it be the mom or the dad. So we have to pay attention to this and understand our personal characters as we grow up as young men and women in contemplating our future relationship with other men and women in relations to keeping that family together. Our characteristics of jealousy and control managed and balanced. See, that's the thing people aren't teaching us as children. They don't teach us about the the id and the ego and the emotional and logic balances, how they interplay and correlate, and how you can use them to your advantage to be the better person, listening to the guys on your shoulder, both good and bad, doing your research on both sides of the track. Don't ever believe anybody. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
On the framework that Richard Gardner put together back in the 1980s. We don't rely on the syndrome framework about parental alienation. Instead, we now talk about parental alienation as a form of psychological manipulation and abuse, well documented in attachment theory, trauma research, high conflict family dynamics, and family systems. Dismissing the entire concept and all of the children experiencing this abuse simply because one man had a bad track record or a faulty belief system is like throwing out all the medicine because one 19th century doctor believed in bloodletting. Parental alienation exists, and thousands of us are living proof. Claiming that the abuse that I and millions of other children have experienced is not real because of one man is also a very clear ad hominem attack. Simple as that. Myth number 3.
And so the parental alienation generally starts at home. Somewhere along the line, whether it be mom and dad or even the child with bruised knees, somebody else getting involved as a concerned person from the outside and bringing in a possible child abuse situation, and then a parental alienation happens, either because of the system or because one parent gets accused of this or that or whatever. And this is why it's so important to maintain what is actually true and know the definitions of the terms and meanings that they're using in all these laws and codes and stuff, and to keep your children educated yourself. The most imperative duty of a mother and father, my people are destroyed by lack of knowledge. And if you're not going to be a priest unto me, then I can't, and then I have to deny you. And if you can't be a priest unto me, you're not teaching your children. Therefore, I must deny your children. The foundation is you, moms and dads, and you have to be the teachers. Otherwise, you are allowing the system to destroy your own children just like it destroyed you.
Number 3. Only
even as adults, you're still children of God, and that's the destruction. See, that's the parental alienation.
On top of this, too, you had the welfare state, which also aids in parental alienation.
Absolutely, from that father's estate that Melvin was talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
See, the welfare only pays attention to the mother and children, and it's based on the foundation that the father is no longer around. Well, what is this fucking child support then? That's what made me question it. Well, if my daddy's not around, why ain't I getting child support in this foster care system? See, that's the fault. See, the child support isn't for the child in reality. It's for the adoptive parents or the foster parents. That child is not a child of the system. It is a biological heir, and they are dismissing the actual true birthright through false enumeration at birth. Certification is false. I was not a foundling. I was born by a biological mother. You knew it. You just didn't reflect that in the record as appropriate, and you bifurcated it into a personhood. I too was indoctrinated to believe I was the person. That bitch ass slave, that fucking fool. Come out of it, people.
mothers alienate their children. This myth is not only false, it's also damaging. Alienation is not about gender. Anyone with a pulse can alienate their children from their other parent. It's about control, manipulation, and fear. It's about personality disorders, if we're being really honest.
Or from both parents.
Yes, mothers can abuse their children, but so can fathers, so can grandparents, so can any caregiver with access to the child and a motive to sever a loving parent-child.
Or any supposed authority, believing that they can express that authority and induce it upon the people and have them believe that they have the authority, even though they have no relation to them, have never met them, and have no fucking clue as to who they would have been unless they walked in front of them in that courtroom. What a grandiose sense of authority, huh, folks?
bond. Alienator is usually the parent who holds the most power in the child's life, emotionally, physically, or legally. When we frame this as a mother's rights versus a father's rights issue, we take the spotlight off of the vulnerable and innocent children suffering. This is a children's rights issue. So let's call it what it is: emotional and psychological abuse, not a gendered game.
When I started drinking cold water to help me lose weight, my friends laughed at me. But when they saw how fast I was...
Myth number 4, parental alienation cannot be diagnosed. This one is tricky because there's no single alienation disorder in the DSM-5, but that doesn't mean it can't already.
See, I don't claim it to be a disorder. I claim it to be an action. It's an action that parties take within it in order to alienate according to their own purposes. That's manipulation. And it is psychological.
Already be identified or treated. Mental health professionals use well-established diagnostic tools to recognize attachment disruptions, coercive control, child psychological abuse, and induced psychological splitting, which are all features of alienation. In fact, the American Psychological Association acknowledges that children can be coerced into rejecting a parent through psychological manipulation. Courts increasingly rely on expert evaluations to determine if estrangement is based on actual abuse or if it's the result of psychological abuse. Dr. Childress's work in particular is excellent for describing how this abuse can already be diagnosed with existing diagnoses in the DSM. So no, there's no checkbox for parental alienation in your insurance database, but experienced clinicians know how to recognize it. And survivors like me, well, we can describe it in painful detail. Myth number 5, alienated children always struggle academically.
Yes, we can. You guys don't know the worst of it unless you've been through it. So again, myself putting my story out there, firsthand information, I'm urging everybody to understand that it affects you one way or another through some sort of association. You know people that have been through this situation, and yet you stand there and back the blue until it happens to you. You're going to wait until they knock on your door? You think they're not going to knock on your door? You've already invited them in. You have an open door policy. You went to them instead of your God.
Academically. This one is half true, which is what makes it dangerous. Yes, some kids who go through this abuse don't do well in school. They may become anxious, depressed, withdrawn, they act out, and others completely shut down. But many of us, we actually become overachievers. We chase grades, awards, trophies, anything to feel good enough for the parent who's manipulating us. For instance,
imagine that. Imagine that. You know, I was heading for a 4.0 when I was getting ready to graduate, but I got myself in trouble with the law because I was just fucking bored. And I ended up missing the last semester of high school except for the last 5 days. So I got a couple days to study before the finals, before we had the last day to clean out our lockers and stuff. But I still ended up graduating with 44 credits and a grade point average of 3.79, despite the fact that I got a failure, a B, an incomplete, and a failure, a B, and an incomplete. So my record, my report card for my senior class final semester read FBI, FBI. Just a coincidence, I'm sure. But I spent the next 33 years in and out of those courts, like I said, every 3, 4, 6 weeks. Till I learned the truth and learned how to stand up. And the truth is, I had to know myself. All my life, I'd been operating in that personage, that personhood, believing I was the person. It wasn't until I realized when that guy on the bench asked me, do you understand English? And I vehemently, the one that walked around as a kid, professing to be the smart one, knowing I was getting good grades and knowing I knew what I was talking about, said yes, because I carried around dictionaries and thesaurus in my backpack. However, what I didn't understand was the legalese and the differences in the grammar. And then when I started really looking at the paperwork, when I vehemently answered that yes, I got to thinking about that, and I thought, wait a minute, there's something about that question he was trying to say. And I really took it as an offense. I thought it was an ignorant question. Maybe it was a good question. So I started looking at that question, and that question made me start looking at the English. So when I started looking at the English in the paperwork, I realized, wait a minute. This document here says last/, firm name. And instead of having my full last name, it just had the first 4 letters of my last name in all uppercase. And then I saw how it recognized me on one side of the court docket as Little, comma, Keith O. And then on the other side, it always said Keith Little or Keith O. Little in upper and lowercase. And that's when I realized they were using different grammars. That meant they were using different forms of English. And now you know why today I dig on the definition of the words. I'm telling you, when you find out the definitions of the words that they're using in those venues, you'll understand the difference between the public and the private, the people and the person, all of it. You'll see those terms that you're used to using as words. In beginning was the word. And once they use a word for a different purpose, now it becomes a term. And when they offer up the use of those terms and you accept them, then that's a formation of a contract.
I became a perfectionist, a people pleaser, a high functioning child with a smiling face and quiet trauma. That was me. I always got straight
Yep.
A's. I played sports. I was involved in many different activities and I excelled at school. To use academic failure as a sure sign of alien.
I didn't get involved in sports, but I was always active. Always outdoors, running the rivers and creeks and climbing up and down trees and in and out of tunnels and caves and whatever I could.
Alienation is not quite accurate. Alienation does,
as well as doing my own paper out and doing my own lawn care throughout the year. Spring cleanup, fall cleanup, spring gardening, summer mowing, winter shoveling, all kinds of stuff. Get myself active and learning.
doesn't show up on a report card. It hides in the emotional gaps, the self-doubt, the loyalty complex, the identity confusion. So if you're a teacher, a therapist, or a judge thinking, this kid seems fine, they must not be alienated, think again. Myth number 6, alienated children never learn the truth. Let me tell you something. The truth has a way of finding us when we're ready. It may come suddenly.
Children recognize the truth automatically. They see you when you're lying. It's when we raise our children lying to them and letting them think that those lies are okay, that they grow up believing that lies are okay too. That is the problem. The presumption on the record is the lie that you laid in it.
Through a document, a letter, a forgotten voicemail, and sometimes it's a slow realization after years of confusion. Sometimes it comes crashing down like a tidal wave when we finally reconnect and compare memories. I used to believe everything that I was told about my dad until I started asking questions, until I looked deeper. We do learn the truth, but often too late, after the damage is already done, after years of silence. And that's why education matters. That's why this project exists, because every truth we tell is a lifeline for someone else still drowning in lies. Alienated.
Education matters. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And if you're not going to be a priest unto me, then I have to deny you. Since you're not a priest unto me to your children, I must deny your children as well. She's saying the exact same thing. It's written in scripture because it's spiritually inherent. That's spiritual knowledge that shouldn't need to be written down. If you don't teach your children what you believe is your God and how to live that life appropriately, they will never learn it. You keep sending your children out to have somebody else teach them without teaching them that foundation yourself and knowing the difference between that public education, and remember this, and being autodidactic and pushing those bounds, using the critical thinking, looking outside the box and looking for new answers to old questions.
Children can learn the truth, and it's my goal to wake them up in greater and greater numbers. Myth number 7.
It's here. This is it. The federal government just come out with some new regulations that allows you to buy real estate with less.
Is that alienated children don't love.
Listen. Aaron Woodard experience on X. I don't care. You've been here several times. You don't have the candor to use proper etiquette as you put the N word in the back chat. So later, buddy. I don't know why it didn't delete that comment too. I'll have to write StreamYard, tell them that if you have a comment up on the screen, when you delete and block one of the chatters, it remains on the screen. So nothing big, but I would just think it would automatically delete all comments everywhere.
The parent they reject. This one breaks my heart. Just because we rejected you does not mean we stopped loving you. We rejected you because we had no other choice. We rejected you because we were taught to, conditioned to, trained to fear you and hate you, manipulated to believe that rejecting you was the right thing to do. We were
and bringing up our children in this welfare system, believing that the system will protect them. Like I said earlier, when mom and dad get in a dispute and the children call the police. Believing that in their little minds, in their fairy tale minds, that because they're special and mom and dad didn't give them something. See, this is the scenario where you go to the dad to ask for something. He says no. So you turn around, you go ask mom, and mom says yes. You have to be aware of this, moms and dads. You have to stop bringing children up in such a cupcake world and teach them the realities of growing up with responsibilities instead of believing that they are going to have this reward system. You have to teach them that the diligence and hard work is the only way to get what is proper and correct. To believe that you can enter in a contest and believing that you're going to be rewarded, particularly a popularity contest that starts when you start indoctrinating them into that public education system. My firm belief. Using that name as a proponent to propel that popularity instead of their characters. See, that's the foundational element that's missing, is people aren't raising their heir apparent up with the proper character to carry on the legacy of the truth. It's a popularity contest of the messenger and fails the aspect of listen to the messenger, or listen to the message and not the messenger. So everybody steps forth as the messenger. It's all about me and my name. That's not your name, it's hearsay.
We're told you didn't care, that you left us, that you were dangerous or crazy or selfish, that you didn't love us, didn't want us, and we were rewarded for pushing you away and punished when we didn't. But deep down, that love is there. We missed you. We cried when no one saw. We wondered if you still thought about us. So if you're a rejected parent listening to this, please hear me. Your child may have pushed you away, but the love, it never left. It just got buried beneath fear, manipulation, and lies. On to our last myth for this video, myth number 8. Therapy always helps alienated children. I wish so badly that this was true. If this was true, family therapy when I was 9, 10, 11, 12 years old would have saved me. But this is not always true. Therapy only works when it's honest. And in cases of alienation, therapy is often weaponized. It's easy for abusive parents to reach the therapist first and paint a negative picture of the safe parent, demonizing them and effectively controlling the narrative before therapy has even begun. Some alienating parents force kids into therapy with biased professionals who already believe that the alienated parent is the villain. Some therapists might avoid conflict altogether and focus on coping skills or play therapy instead of the truth. Other therapists might be oblivious, taking the child's parroted words at face value. Others might have an inkling that something is off with the family dynamics, but they may fear the controlling parent. They may avoid conflict in order to safeguard their license. And alienated children, we say what we're supposed to say to stay safe. We repeat lies that we believe wholeheartedly without knowing their lies. The words of the
And though I was alienated from both parents, and of course, eventually alienated from my own adoptive parents, of course, that's because she wanted to throw out a lie. My mom did. You know, I've always recognized the lies. Again, children are not stupid. And so when my mom looked at me at almost 50 years old and said, the police are your authority, which is a bold lie. There is no authority but that which is ordained of God. And I myself, formed in the belly before he knew me, or before I was formed in the belly, he knew me. That's when I was sanctified and ordained. That tells me that no other man, even my own father as an adult, has authority over me. Okay, and real quick here, guys, I got to put something up here. Jay, can you open your cam just so I know you're not somebody that's not supposed to be here or is going to cause any problems? Not familiar with you, brother.
Who is it?
Says Jay.
I can't see it.
Yeah, it's supposedly a brother with a red cap and a blue shirt, blue button-up shirt with a white T-shirt underneath. Brother, you gotta open your mic and tell me something and show me your cam. Otherwise, I can't let you up, brother. In the meantime, we just lost Melvin. Well, you can sit there in the background, and you ever get the message to open your mic and cam and speak and show me who you are, I'll be glad to let you up. But until then, you got to sit backstage, brother. My apologies.
The alienated child in therapy cannot be taken at face value, but most therapists do exactly that. Therefore, effective therapy for alienated kids requires neutrality, education, and the willingness to dig deeper into the family system. It requires helping the child understand their own thoughts, not just reinforcing the alienator's script. It involves challenging the child and often analyzing the child's relationship dynamic with the abusive parent and removing.
Right. Asking that child to be autodidactic in his own experience, to look in himself and determine for himself, discern for himself what it means to him so that he can look beyond, outside of the box and start using his critical thinking. They're not stupid. Help them in that intellect. Help them learn how to use it by using that firsthand experience, what they're going through, and contemplate it with logic and reason and leave the emotions out, or at least quell them so you have some kind of passivity so you can be reasonable in logic. It's imperative that we help our children grow spiritually by recognizing how to use the emotions in a balance, just like you can use the logic and reason in a balance. Everything is a balance, and it's about your character, not the name.
Moving them from that parent's care if necessary. I hate to admit it, but the wrong therapist can actually make things worse. The right ones?
I didn't know this until my grandma died, but funerals cost at least 15 grand. Money I didn't have to give her.
Can change a life. So here we are.
Absolutely correct. I believe the same thing, just like we talked about the courts. The courts are absolutely damaging. And when it comes to these therapists, if they've got a subjective view, are indoctrinated themselves into a certain format and don't have the critical thinking to see outside the box on an individual basis, then they can't help the individual. They're going to pragmatically delineate them into a subclass or a classification of some kind for their own subjective analysis. It's much like a pre-programming. We have to get out of that pre-programming, folks.
8 myths, 8 truths, and still we have barely scratched the surface. I could do another video on debunking myths about the abuse I went through for 20 years. Parental alienation is not just misunderstood, it's actively dismissed by courts, by therapists, by schools, even by family members who mean well but don't know better. And the ones who suffer the most, they're the children caught in the middle. The children forced to split their hearts in two. The children like me who grow up carrying someone else's hatred in their own mouths and in their own hearts and calling it truth. This cycle.
And so, yes, you can call me that hateful, angry old man all you want. I will agree. I will admit it's true. But I have one of the best reasons for it. That doesn't mean I'm always going to be that angry, hateful, old, angry man. Because I see myself gradually getting better. That's for damn sure. And again, excuse me for my passion. But I don't give one fuck whether you don't like it or not. This is a priority. And I'm done with people that want to just sit back. This shit happens only because good people won't stand up and do something about it. So if you're not going to stand up and do something about it, then I don't really see you as a very good person. So when you want to back the blue until it happens to you, I'm not going to be at your funeral when they shoot you in the back. Understood?
Psychological abuse is real. Yes, it's complex, it's painful, and yes, it's controversial. But behind the controversy are kids, real kids, kids like I was. We are not political pawns and we are not courtroom strategies. We're real human beings just trying to make sense of what has happened to us. Children deserve to live in reality. So let's stop repeating these myths. They only distract from solutions and protecting children experiencing this abuse. Instead,
and that's exactly what they are. They're pawns in this whole game. Even if it's not family court yet, say you get a DUI. Guess what, folks? Depending on what kind of job you have, what kind of wife you have, it very well could destroy the family. And again, it's your own doing, ladies and gentlemen, moms and dads, men and women.
let's start listening, really listening to stories of survivors. Let's protect children, not egos. So the parents going through this, I can't promise it's going to work out the way you want it to, but I can tell you that staying present, staying honest, and staying available matters more than you think. Sometimes the impact of your love isn't seen until years later. Sometimes the seeds you plant don't bloom until long after the damage has been done. To the professionals, friends, and extended families watching this happen, speak up, ask harder questions, listen without bias. The story you're hearing might not be the whole truth. And to the children, the ones trying to sort through what was real and what wasn't, you're not alone, and you're not weak for still being affected by what you went through. It takes a lot of strength to...
You are not weak for still being affected by what you went through. You may exhibit features that you're weak, and depending upon your lifestyle and how you live it, other people will be able to discern that weakness. If you think I'm weak because I get angry, that's fine by me. I don't give a fuck.
To unlearn what you were taught to believe and to question reality. I'm proud of you. Thanks for spending this time with me. This conversation needs to keep going in families, in courtrooms, online, in therapy, in society, and everywhere. Because every time we tell the truth, we make it just a little bit harder for these myths to hide the reality of this abuse. Thank you for watching. I hope you found it insightful or helpful in some way. Please take care of yourself. I'll talk to you next time.
So you can find this gal on Facebook, like I said, the Anti-Alienation Project. The Anti-Alienation Project on Facebook and on YouTube. So here is the link on YouTube. Feel free to go check them out. And what do you got, guys? I know you guys are affected by this one way or another. I know you are, Melvin. You've got some wonderful children that you're bringing up magnificently, I think. Are you still there, Melvin? Did you walk away on me again?
No, I didn't. No. Yeah, I'm here. I really just, it ain't no stall. I just don't want to seem like the bad guy when I do what I have to do.
Absolutely, and that's the thing, guys. You cannot feel bad about doing what's right. Just like truth needs no defense. If you're doing what's true, then don't feel bad about doing what's right because it needs no defense. If anybody comes up in offense of the truth, that tells you all about them. Lex Anamata says, careful not to volunteer to third-party debt collectors, a.k.a. child support agency corporation of the state of. Absolutely, that's what it's all about. You've got this state of thing or this state thing, United States thing, and it's all a false patriarch business franchise. It's all about business. Nothing personal, just business, folks.
Yeah, it's a crappy system.
Absolutely. We're not brought up to learn exactly what it is, and that's the major problem, the education.
Yeah. Well, legalese ought to be outlawed, you know.
Well, no, it needs to be learned. Understand, let me pull it up.
Well, but if people used common language for law,
Right.
instead
There
of
you go.
legalese.
Well, and that's the thing, though. They do.
Yeah.
See, positive law, folks, will show you things in concise English. This is why I talk about those U.S. codes and certain ones as it relates to the definitions and what they use them in their wording. The conciseness of what they use in some of those codes will tell you whether it's positive law or not, if you recognize it. So let's take a look. For all you Christians out there, which is the foundation of this American society and its supreme law of the land, the Constitution of the United States, is founded on the scriptures. And here we have Isaiah 54 of the King James Version of the Bible. It says, "No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise up, or that shall rise against thee in judgment, thou shalt condemn." Every tongue, every language, every word that shall rise against thee in judgment, thou shalt condemn. Why? Because it's not for other people to condemn a man. Leviticus 25, verse 23 through 25. When a man walketh with the Lord, all you Christians, why is it bringing up? That's not what I wanted. 25, verse 23 through 25. There we go. Okay, so rather than condemning a man, why is it? So rather than condemning man, our intent for all you Christians that walk with the Lord, the land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine, for ye are strangers and sojourners with me. Since you're strangers and sojourners with your Lord, all of you Christians claiming to be so, following that good old poem, Footprints in the Sand, delegating that when you are not seen and you do not see your footprints and you see another set of footprints, it is because God, your Lord, is carrying you across those lands that shall not be sold forever, for they are his. And in all of the land of your possession ye shall grant a redemption for the land that has been condemned. See, when you redeem something, you're redeeming it because it's been condemned. Like a vessel that has been condemned, you redeem it through salvation, a salvage process. If thy brother be waxen poor and hath sold away some of his possession, and if any of his kin come to redeem it, then shall he redeem that which his brother sold. We are not supposed to be condemning each other. We are supposed to be rising up against thee in judgment, and shalt condemn the judgment. Every word that shall rise against thee in judgment, thou shalt condemn. It doesn't say every man that rises against thee in judgment, thou shalt condemn. It says every tongue, meaning every language, every word, whether it be concise English or legalese. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me, saith the Lord. And then in Timothy, 2 Timothy 2:15, study to shew thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And thereby redeeming the people that are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And because they had rejected that knowledge before and are now taking it in, this is why I say, if you have heard this and you can comprehend it in its plain English, women and men, and yet you still do not do anything about it, then just as he rejects you, then I'll reject you too. Get it? I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children. So as I say, fuck you to you, men and women, if you're not going to teach your children about it, all you good Christians walking with your God, then I say, fuck you to your children too. And if you don't like that and you're incensed by it, then please tell me how I'm wrong as you profess your own Christianity. What do you guys got to say on our way out the door?
Yeah, there should be more God and less government in people's lives, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Oklahoma is bringing back a bill to reintroduce the scriptures in school. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
What about you, Melvin?
Get our stuff corrected and just start talking straight to Congress. At this point, might as well just go ahead and just file claims on the products that they're issuing out, which is their code.
Yeah, that you're right. They are products. They're patented and copyrighted, folks.
Right. So, that was one of the things I said to the attorney for the Senate down here. I said, yeah, one of your products has caused us harm. And she was like, what do you mean product? I said, well, there's the code. And she broke it down to where when they make the code, it goes to LexisNexis. They sell it to LexisNexis. LexisNexis sells it to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State sells it to the State Bar. She told me the whole chronological order of how they even market those products. So,
yeah,
that's the first thing I think.
Well, and I just did a video here the other day on LexisNexis and suppressing that information too, guys. Just so you know, just a few days back. So, and Iman Bey says, greetings, beloved brother Keith. Tried to get up, but it won't allow me. I don't know what to tell you, sister. It's always allowed you before, so my apologies.
Would be the best way.
Don't know what to tell you.
Huh?
I was talking to Iman Bey about coming up on panel. Said that it wouldn't allow her.
I don't know.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys coming up on panel. Giving you final words on your way out. Anything you got to say or now?
I'm good. Thanks for having me up.
I'm good too. I just need to get the deed to the Contract Board of Appeals, I guess. and probate. I'm gonna see what they say.
All right. Yeah. Keep in touch and let me know. Because I think that
All right.
probate, that legal notice to probate is one of the most important ones, because that's what's entered when they enumerate at birth. That's the creation of an estate in probate, because you're an incompetent and mom and dad signed over all rights and titles and interest in the enumeration of birth. Anyway, I appreciate you guys. Feel free to come up. Feel free to come up anytime. I'm going to try to start doing these videos more often. I do have some more videos lined up that I want to do on a regular basis as far as police interactions. So my next video will be tomorrow sometime. Look for it. Hopefully around the same time, 5 p.m. I want to make it a regular scheduled times to help get viewership going again.
I got a good idea on that topic.
Okay. But tomorrow it's going to be Lieutenant forgets his oath.
Yeah, I say, first thing I say, the commissioner of your Department of Public Safety and the attorney for the Department of Public Safety, you need to get that record to the clerk of the driver's record. It's called a driver's, my state is called a driver's record. Certain states administrated from the Davis system, other ones do it through the, I think that's the Emergency Motor Vehicle Act or something like that down here. I'm gonna find it. But each state accommodates and regulates their ledger and their record differently through the Department of State.
Correct.
Correcting that record will solidify if you get safe passage or not. That's the only thing. They don't have a bond. They don't have a bond for y'all to go through them damn ports efficiently and collect a charge and go scot-free. They don't have a bond in place. They don't have none of it. So some stuff needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and that Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, again, understand that's administration at the executive level. It's an executive order. Now they're administrating that executive order. Okay, so the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Act is what is actually being registered. When you register with the DMV, you're registering to get a decal to put on a plate to register it in a the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Act as part of a theft prevention program. Well, that's a voluntary program. And the only way they say that it's required is because that plate is subsequent to a driver's license that says you're performing the functions of public office. So now you have a public office. You're supposed to have taken an oath to hold a public office. And that's why you now have to have a license, because you're the one under public office has to have a contract in order to get paid emoluments for using the public roads. You have to have something outside of your oath of office to be able to use the roads for commercial purposes. And yes, and that's the legal aspect, not the political aspect of an oath. You have a political aspect of the oath that is an obligation under the Constitution of the United States. And then you have the legal aspect, which is the contract under the license at the state level.
Right.
So think about this, folks. And again, thanks, Washington. I want everybody to be blessed. You guys know me. I love you. But I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. I really don't. And that's to say, I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. That part's on you. So may your God bless you and have a good day. We'll see you next time, guys. Thanks again.
All right. See you later.